We already called to order this meeting at 6 p.m. because we convened in a closed session to speak with our legal counsel to discuss pending litigation regarding Dorothy Woods. And now we're ready to start our regular meeting. For our agenda this evening, we have one change. We're going to pull from the consent agenda the single reading ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for design and engineering services for the New Avenue Bikeways project. So that will just get pulled from, there was a request to pull that from the consent agenda. So we'll just talk. Yeah, we'll still have it tonight, just not in the consent agenda so we can discuss it. Looking at our upcoming agenda, next week, we have another closed session to get legal advice on condemned property and business request for reduction of a personal property tax payment. We then have at 7:30 two public hearings, one on traffic calming for the 700 block of Houston Avenue, and a public hearing on traffic calming for Hilltop Road between Geneva and Mississippi Avenues. Our voting session that night will be a resolution regarding Takoma Park Middle School expansion, which we will hear about this evening. And we have a resolution approving the purchase of 7905 Flower Avenue by Montgomery County, also something we'll hear about this evening. We will have a single reading ordinance authorizing purchase and installation of emergency equipment on replacement police vehicles, and a resolution appointing a legal services advisory group. Our work session next week will be a discussion of the traffic calming on the 700 block of Houston Avenue and a discussion of traffic calming for Hilltop Road and an update on Takoma Park Recreation Center next steps. On Wednesday, September 19th, we'll have a presentation of the Takoma Park property tax structure for commercial properties. Our voting session will be on the first reading ordinance amending the ethics ordinance and a resolution providing for appointments to committees. And then we are tentatively scheduled on Monday, September 24th, to have a council meeting with the Commemoration Commission. This is a joint meeting that we were supposed to have back in March, but because of a snowstorm, we had to postpone it. So that are our upcoming agenda items. I just want to welcome everyone back. Hopefully everyone is well rested. And just to let people know, we have a very busy fall ahead of us. Tonight, meeting, our agenda is a little bit different than normal because we have a number of reports and visitors to our city this evening. So we changed our agenda to make sure that they could go early on in the meeting. And there were just a couple of items, as I noted, that we'll have to vote on before the end of September. So we wanted to make sure we got that information so that we could vote on those things. Looking to the fall, some things that the council will be taking up that we want to make sure are on people's radar. We will be returning to our conversation on affordable housing. I'm sure the city manager will talk about in her city manager comments that we have new housing staff person on board. We're going to give them a chance to get settled, and then we're going to put them to work and take up our strategic plan on affordable housing. We will also be taking up looking at our tax system. A few months ago, we did vote to get rid of the personal property tax in the city and at the inventory portion. And we did talk about coming back and discussing the commercial property tax rate in time for our next budget season. So we'll be doing that this fall, and also reaching out to the businesses in the community and discussing it with them. We will be continuing our work on racial equity. Just one piece of that is Annie Moser will be undertaking workshops called What's My Bias, and the information about that will be out shortly. And council members Kovar, Dabala, and Kostiak have already started and volunteered over the recess to think about how we're going to tackle the tree ordinance coming up. So I'm looking forward to hearing their plans on that. And we have many other items that we'll be addressing. We look forward to hearing about the ongoing mediation between the co-op and NDC. We have traffic calming in areas of the city, and we're going to start tonight and talk about the conversion of streetlights to LED. So not the first thing, but we have a lot going on this fall, and I just want to give people a kind of a heads up on what we're doing. Before we get to our presentations, we also have one other thing for the record tonight. We have a proclamation for September as Preparedness Month in Takoma Park. The theme this year is Disasters Happen, Prepare Now, Learn How. And so we are proclaiming September National Preparedness Month. All right, with that, we'll begin with our presentations. The first one we have is a presentation and discussion of the Takoma Park Middle School expansion. I don't know if we have enough, do we have enough seats for everyone?
So we have Gary Mosesman from Montgomery County Public Schools and Ron Okovich from SEI Architects to talk about the Takoma Park Middle School addition. Thanks.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here again. I was here about a year ago talking about another project. But I'd like to thank everybody sitting here that appreciates your time today to kind of come and talk a little bit about what's happening at Takoma Park Middle School. But I also like to start out by thanking Susan and her staff. They've been great to work with. Roz has been fantastic, and we do appreciate the input that they do give us. It's definitely gives us some additional insight on these projects as we work through them, and we want to make sure that we address everybody's concerns, not only the communities, but also the city's concerns while we work through the project.
And I will just also, I guess, compliment the staff from the school system that they've been very responsive. They've come to multiple meetings, and very nice to work with. So I'm glad that you're here, and look forward to your presentation on this important project.
Thank you. And I just want to give one more kind of shout out to Ali and Daryl. We came to them just recently on another small project. We have a small space initiative project for playground areas, and we're initiating it here at Takoma Park Elementary School. And we kind of surprised them with a phone call, and our board is pushing really hard to get this project done. And I know Daryl's out here, and I want to thank that staff also for their willingness to come see us so quickly. And I think you guys should be aware of how the willingness for them to come work with us and these kind of unique situations when they pop up. So once again, like to thank your staff. Tonight we're here to talk a little bit about Takoma Park Middle School expansion. It's a 16 classroom expansion to the project to meet enrollment needs that we're forecasting. Part of the project also is a shell build out space where we're building future space for 6 additional classrooms, because enrollment growth is trending in that direction where we're going to need that. So instead of coming back out here and disturbing the site again, we're going to go ahead and build the shell space for it so that it's an easy fit out when we come back and address the project. But I don't want to get into too much and steal the thunder from the architect that's here to give his presentation, so I'll let him do his presentation. I know there's a couple of questions that have been posed to us that we'll make sure we'll address during the presentation a little bit afterwards, but I'll let Ron go ahead and take it from here about the addition.
Thanks. Again, very happy and excited to be here to talk about this important project, Takoma Park Middle School. I'll start quickly with the site plan of the existing condition. To the southwest of the site is parking and bus loop and the front entry door to the site. We don't plan to do any modifications in that front area of the site at all. Really, our additions will go on the back of the building and to the east of the building. As you know, behind the school, there's a significant hill. So topography has been a challenge to our project from the get-go. And at the bottom of the hill is this multi-purpose field, which is a great community amenity that the entire, we see games going across each other when we've been out there observing. So kudos to you for the way you get to use this field out there. There are tennis courts, which are currently occupied by some portables, so bringing those kind of amenities by bringing that capacity of student and learning back into the school is something that we'll add. And there's also a lack of hard surface play area per the standard program requirements. So those are things on the site that we'll be looking to address. Here we have the proposed site plan, and really the expansion to the project will consist of two areas of addition. One to the east, which will be an expansion of the physical education program, and the addition to the north will be an expansion of the educational program, which will essentially continue the 3-level plan that exists on that north corner of the site. You can also see on this plan the new basketball area, which is the additional play surface, and the tennis courts, which will now be returned and refurbished into tennis court spaces. Working across the back of the building, we of course have that hill. We are planning to maintain the seating area and actually enhance that a little bit. We're planning a step seating area that can be used for a number of things, both for the school's purposes as well as the community's purposes, and that's an outdoor learning environment. It occurs, I don't think this will work up there, will it? No. It occurs at the nexus of our special education program, special programs component of the building, so art, technology, sciences, and the significant classroom addition. So whatever class wants to go out and use that. For other uses, and these were options and opportunities that we discussed in our community meetings when we were planning the project. Seeing the fireworks, there was a folk festival that was discussed at some of our community meetings, so that would be a great outdoor venue to address that. And we've been asked also, of course, the sledding hill is an extremely well-known component of this site. To the east of that stairwell sidewalk, that sledding hill will remain untouched. And there was discussion that a piece of the sledding hill that could be shorter for younger kids would be a safe amenity to add. So at the south, and I'll show renderings of this as we go on the east side, of that stairway, there will now be a sledding hill that's a little bit shorter in length for the younger kids. But one of the beauties of doing this is that we also now have complete accessibility around the entire perimeter of the building. So ADA access now with this tiered seating area, there'll be a series of little switchbacks that bring you all the way down along with the stairs. So anyone can access any piece of this site and use all of the amenities on the entire building site. Into the plan, on the top left of the plan, in the area of white is the area of the building that we're not going to be affecting. In the top left of the plan is a 3-story addition. We'll be continuing a loop circulation around the courtyard. This offers us an opportunity to retain natural light into every classroom. So every student will have access to both light and views, whether into the courtyard or out to the fields beyond. And the plan will be stratified 3 floors, 1 floor per grade, as the existing school building is right now. And in addition to the 16 classrooms and 6 shell classrooms that Gary talked about, every floor will have a science room, and there will be a tech lab added for 21st century learning environments that aren't necessarily in the existing middle school right now. So a great opportunity for that. Along with expanding the core of the capacity of the building, we have to have impact to the core as well. And that is where we start to affect the cafeteria on the right side. So with a greater capacity of students, we have to feed more students during the day in the same number of lunch periods. So the music room is being rebuilt in the addition to the east, to the right side of the screen, and in its place, a new stage will now alleviate and make that cafeteria much larger to accommodate the students that we're accommodating in the building. And in addition, Montgomery County's physical education program has become more robust over the years. So additional spaces, a health room, a health lab, and some additional small gymnasium type spaces are added on the east side. Teachers and community alike really enjoyed the opportunity that this new addition creates another loop circulation in the school. This improves security in the sense where you can put one administrator on each corner of the building and be able to surveil all of the corridors, and also improves access to amenities within the building such as toilet rooms and offices. They're much easier to get to now. So the plan, by building these additions, makes the existing building better. Moving up into the building, the 3-story addition really continues the same way for the next 2 stories upward from the ground floor. The existing building is a fixture to the community, kind of a center of the school, and of the neighborhood architecturally. We really want to kind of expand that into the elevations beyond, using some of the same materiality and some of the same undulations in the building to break the scale down. Other moves that we've been making are to break down the window scale so that the windows are more of a residential scale. So we try to take this rather large building and make it feel a little bit smaller as we design. And you can see here in the articulation of the windows, the view on Piney Branch is a pretty prominent view as you're coming and you're seeing this corner and elevation. So we wanted to feature that. This is an image, a little dark on the screen, but of that stepped seating area and that sidewalk, which will then be for the lower sledding hill. And coming on the back side, you can really see that in elevation as we take a bird's eye view of the rear elevation. And here you can see that the zigzag is the ramping that brings you down, ADA accessible now, to the sidewalk. To the left of the image is a full-length sledding hill as it is right now. To the right is a shorter sledding hill below that seating venue. And this is just another view of the second addition with the new hardscape amenity at the back of the building. So we are continuing on our path towards this presentation and Maryland National Capital Park planning. Of course, all of our permit process, we hope to be in the ground in January, if possible. Again, I want to reiterate Gary's comments on working with staff. We've been working with Ali, as our civil engineers and Montgomery County's landscapers, on some stormwater management data that you're seeking from us, which MCPS is working on getting as quickly as possible. And we've been also working with the Tree Safe Plan. We intend to submit at the end of the month and continue working with Jan and staff to satisfy all of their needs in that regard as well. With that, really excited to present the project, and thank you for having us here.
Part of this is that in order to meet the fairly aggressive building schedule, this goes before the planning board in a week.
Yeah, the 13th.
And so on your agenda is a resolution regarding this for next week, so that we were able to have council's opinion submitted basically the morning of that planning board meeting on the Thursday next week.
Terrific, thank you. Gary, do you have anything else to add, or?
No, I'm
You good at this time?
You have any questions?
I think I see some lights. Councilmember Smith, you want to start it?
Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. How many kids will this expansion handle?
So right now, the addition right now will take us to 1,306 students, with the build out of the 6 classrooms close to 1,500 if we build out that space.
Okay, great. And what is the timeline? When do you think the entire build-out will be finished?
So right now, originally we were going to have the whole entire project completed by 2020, but when we started looking at phasing of the project and how students would move around the site and constructability, because when you look at this addition, it's not just one location, it's 2 locations. So we actually have changed the completion date of the 3-story addition to be 2020, and then we're going to come back. That's a continuation, clean that area up, and then move over to the right-hand side and finish that up by 2023. So a year later, we're going to push that one out. We're going to start do the construction, but it's going to definitely be phased.
Okay.
So that originally wasn't in the. Well, I know when we started looking at the constructability, that's when it became very obvious.
And that also actually has some benefits for the use of the field and that kind of thing. So there would be partial use of the Lee Jordan Field throughout the construction period.
All right, thank you.
Great. Actually, that was the question I had from some residents who use the field a great deal and access the equipment sheds. So I don't know if there was any more information, if you could just elaborate on what the city manager said regarding about access to the fields and the equipment sheds.
Sure. So unfortunately, we are going to impact the fields, and we've been working with staff on what that's going to look like. As far as accessibility to the sheds, I don't know the plan off the top of my head, but I can get back to you and let you know how we're affecting that area and give you a more appropriate response to that.
Great, that would be terrific. Thank you. Councilmember Siemens?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for the presentation tonight. Just continuing on with Councilmember Smith's questions, when you say the 3rd-story addition would be completed by 2020, you're talking about school year, the beginning of school year 2020?
It's going to be the beginning of the school year.
Okay. And when do you expect to break ground?
That would, well, hopefully we should award in January. So we don't start construction. As soon as we award, it takes a while to procure the equipment.
Sure.
January is not the greatest time to start construction. So it'll probably be in the spring at some point when you'll start seeing some real heavy activity, maybe a little bit earlier.
Spring of 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
All right. And is this presentation available on our website, or is it going to be?
It will be, and we have been linking to the school district's plans also on our website already. So.
Okay, and is there a diagram in there for aerial view to give a better indication of
I believe we have that, but I will double check. We'll make sure that that's up.
That would be helpful.
And I just want to correct something. The addition of the gym site would be 2021, not 2023. I
Idea.
realized I said 23, and I'm like, all right, well, we're
Slow
not that
start.
slow.
All right, I thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeBala.
Yes, I was also going to ask about the fields and the sheds. So that is pretty important to the very large soccer program that goes on in the city, among other things.
Mhm.
So if you could get back to us on that. The joys of going last, I was also going to ask about the numbers of students. How many students are there now in
I have to look at our CIP.
Is it about 1,300 or is it much less?
No, we're right now sitting at 939, enrollments of 1,193. That's right, according to
So
our
with
CIP.
with the portables, call it 1,200, okay. And the parking lots are not gonna get affected?
No, currently there's sufficient parking, even for the projected growth out on the site.
And did you do projected traffic and parking, and that's somewhere on the website?
Well, the traffic study, there was a traffic study completed, which was presented to Park and Planning, so we can get a copy of that if you don't have a copy of that.
Great,
We did see it before. I think we're linked to it, but we'll make sure that that's up.
all right. That's it, thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Kostiak.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just had a couple of follow-up questions on similar topics. So the new students who are going to be in the building, is this intended to be just growth through current projections of enrollment, or are they pulled in from some new location?
No, there's no boundary study that's going with this. It's just addressing the growth that's in the county with
Okay.
projections.
Okay. And during the construction itself, in terms of displacement for parking and staging locations, what are you looking at for your plans?
Well, I guess that's the unfortunate thing about having it on the back side of the site. It's not going to impact any of the parking in the front of the school or any of the services at the front of the school. Some of this construction will go over the summer, where we do take over we're accessing the building from the parking lot, but the students won't be here during that time.
Okay.
It's frankly, that's the reason that there's an impact to the field,
Mhm.
is because that's where
Sure.
the staging is.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Councilman Kovar.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm glad to hear about it because I think a lot of us have felt that sometimes there's been an under forecast of student population here, and so this is something that can help to address that. I did just want to say a few more things about the construction and what the plans are for that. And one of the reasons I want to mention that is, and you wouldn't necessarily be aware of it, but in that kind of general area, there's a lot of construction happening now or going to be happening over the same exact period of time that you're talking about. So even though the staging may occur on the field, which I think is preferable to having it be in the residential areas, I'm just thinking in terms of the noise and the other kinds of things that occur, and that might be roughly around the same time when the library is being worked on and the new building in Montgomery College and so on. So have you thought any more about where the large vehicles will go when they're brought in, and how early you'll be starting, and will you have somebody there that residents can be in touch with if there's problems and that sort of thing?
Sure. So I'll try and answer all the questions, but they seem to be all construction related. As far as construction traffic, the vehicles will be accessing along Piney Branch along the way. I don't see them coming. There's no way they're going to be coming through the neighborhoods. I was around when we did Takoma Park Elementary School, and that was a fun little street on Holly coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But we do make our contractors aware of the restrictions within the area, if there are any restrictions. We also make sure that they park on site, that they're not parking within the neighborhood, so we make sure that we address that, from a construction impact to the site, that there is a staging area that contractors can utilize. And then the question about noise, we do enforce within MCPS the noise ordinance. We don't tolerate being a bad neighbor. Our contractors are all pre-approved contractors, and they know that this is a school site first, but also that they're also representing us within the community, and that they need to be very respectful to those requirements.
So the construction, though, will be taking place while the students are in school
That is
also,
correct.
right? So is that a concern in terms of, disruption of the classroom experience and so on? Is that something that, I assume you've dealt with that in other
Yeah, we do have
situations,
that,
but maybe you can just say a word or two about that.
No, yeah, we definitely are used to working adjacent to classroom spaces. The contractors are on a daily communication with the school administration, so we know when testing's happening, we know when fire drills are happening. We are really kept up to speed on what's happening within the school, so that we don't affect any of the curriculum that's going on. So we're very aware, we're very used to dealing in those working those situations. Contractors are all, and I'll get into a little bit about security. They're all screened. Everybody wears a yellow badge. There's fingerprinting backgrounds. We have a very robust system in place, and we don't tolerate. There's zero tolerance for any type of communication between contractors, students, and staff, and parents. So I think, from a standpoint from Montgomery County Public Schools, this is a situation we're very used to. We're used to working on tight sites and adjacent to classroom spaces while they're in session.
Okay, and just two other really quick things. You said the tree plans would be made available a little bit later? Did I hear that correctly? Or?
So there's some coordination going on between our forester, or our landscape architect,
Yeah.
and he's working directly with the civil engineer as well as the city's forestry person.
Okay.
So there've been a couple of questions back and forth, and we make sure that we address those and we adhere to any kind of requirements that may be put on us.
So would you say, though, that some of the trees maybe along Piney Branch, that would be the area where there might be potential loss of some trees?
I mean, I can't speak to which trees are
Yeah.
in question, but if we can get back to you on
Okay.
that.
I can speak a little bit to the tree issue. My understanding is that the primary issue is at the rear back corner of the lot, not along Piney Branch.
Okay.
And there was going to be an access actually off of Grant that's no longer going to be done. So many fewer trees are impacted, certainly a lot fewer trees that are visible
Okay.
would be impacted. Nevertheless, we do also care about those that go down the steep hill.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Mayor.
and Councilmember Siemens has one more question.
I don't know there's one more, but I appreciate the second round. Unfortunately, the answers you gave me the last round of questions spawned some more questions from worried people about the answers you gave. And that's, the field is widely used, including the seating on the hill during the Independence Day fireworks celebration. And I'm just wondering, and maybe tonight's not the time for the answer, but what we could do to try to accommodate having a large event there in that field on July 4th of 2019.
Okay, we can look into that.
Thank you.
Great, all right. Seeing no other questions, I think we have some things that you'll follow up with us on, and we'll start drafting the resolution for next week. I think there were a couple of items that were raised here that might be good to have reflected in the resolution regarding the playing fields and construction concerns, just to make sure that we document some of the points that council members have raised this evening. And I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight, showing us and having us see the presentation. Very glad the sledding hill is staying, and I wish the smaller one had been there when my children were smaller. It would have saved me some heart palpitations over the years. So thank you, and I think we all look forward to this.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next presentation. We will be now talking about our street light LED conversion. I think we have our head of Public Works to help walk us through this.
Yeah, thank you. In addition to my general comments just in the beginning, hopefully to kind of give some context, provide some history, a little reminders, even a little word power learning. In addition to myself, I have from PEPCO, Barbara Gonzalez, who's been the project manager, Jerry Pasternak, who most of you I'm sure know, as well as representatives from Lockheed Martin that have been working with us on the Empower Maryland grant application, Francis Phillips and Roger Higgins. So I appreciate them coming out this evening to help describe the project. I wanted to kind of, and I will be as brief as I can, give a little history, both for those council members who are new and haven't been going through this for the past decade or more, like many of us, as well as a refresher for the others. And I'm hoping to talk a bit about the history, kind of how we got here, some specifics about our existing streetlights that we've learned since really getting into the weeds of the project, and also reiterate why we're doing this, what the benefits are to the city and the residents, and then turn it over to the Pepco folks to speak to the details about the lighting. I just wanted to point out that we've been talking streetlights in the city really for over a dozen years, and in some very formal ways as well. In 2014, our local action plan on greenhouse gas emissions reduction mentioned streetlights, had a specific chapter on streetlights. We did a tour with a streetlight expert from Connecticut who talked to us about street lighting in the city, made strong recommendations about the need to reduce the energy use from the streetlights and improve the lighting in the streetlights. We have very disparate lighting levels in areas of the city, and I'll go into that a little bit more in detail. Back then, there were no such thing as LEDs. They may have been invented, but they certainly weren't in commercial use and definitely not in streetlight capacity. The newfangled thing back then was induction lighting, and some of you may have been around long enough to know that. So the city jumped on that with both feet, started doing induction lighting conversion for our decorative streetlights, the ones that we own and manage along areas like Carroll Avenue, Lee Avenue, Holton Lane. So those were a great change in technology because they allowed us to get a wider light, a more pleasant light, versus what the trend had been moving towards, which was high-pressure sodium. So the next, one of the next times the streetlight issue came up was, again, strong recommendations in the task force on the environmental action report, and then followed up by our second greenhouse gas emissions report, the Sustainability Action Plan, which listed streetlights as a key component. We often joke in the office that had we been able to get this project moving sooner, we wouldn't have tied for third in the greenhouse. In the Georgetown Energy Prize, we may have gotten third or second because the energy reductions that we're talking about are that significant. Basically, one of the reasons this is an important issue is because streetlight energy is our largest single energy user that the city pays for and manages. We've done a lot of work, as I mentioned, on decorative streetlight energy improvements. We've done a lot of work on building fixture lighting improvements, both interior and exterior. But streetlights remain this big thing out there for us to wrap our hands around. We started talking in more detail with the council 2015, 2016, and I probably made 3 or 4 presentations, and at that point we were trying to figure out how to do this, how to move this forward. Now that LEDs were available, we had options of going to a municipal system, negotiating with Pepco to buy the fixtures themselves, outright own the fixtures, replace them, manage them. We could do that through a third party or ourselves, or we were taking a look at the option of retrofitting through Pepco. Based on a lot of conversations back and forth, we had Jerry here a couple of times, the council made the decision to move forward in 2016 with the retrofit through Pepco. And so that's when we really could start honing in on what this would mean and how we could do it. And one of the critical pieces to move us forward, the council established in their resolution some very specific requirements for city staff to pass on to Pepco and moving forward. I hope, did we include the resolution in the agenda packet? No, well, we can make sure council has that if you don't. But there were 3 really key components in that resolution. And our discussion in 2016, shortly prior to that, the American Medical Association had issued its report on LEDs and not just LEDs with streetlights, but basically we're inundated with LEDs. Your cell phone, your TV screen, your computer screen. I mean, the LED lighting is everywhere. And so the American Medical Association has weighed in on that in reference to the impact it's having on people's sleep cycles, circadian rhythm, general health, eye health. And so they made a recommendation that that the issue of color lighting color be taken much more seriously, and particularly in regards to exposures where you don't have control, as well as recommendations for people when they do have control of their own devices. So given that background, the three conditions that the city moved forward with was that our streetlight retrofit for LEDs had to be 3,000 Kelvin, which was the American Medical Association's recommendation, as well as our partners at the Department of Energy Outdoor Lighting Consortium that the city's been involved with and working with. And Jean and I have been on conferences several times over the past few years. So 3,000 Kelvin, dark sky compliant, and again, we've all learned a lot about what that means. There is an International Dark Sky Association, which is at the forefront of this issue of light pollution. And just, again, not to get too detailed, but the issue of streetlight generated light pollution was generally caused by the type of fixtures we had. If you live in many parts of the city and you look up at the streetlight fixture, you actually see the bulb exposed below the fixture itself. So the metal housing the fixture is here and the bulb is here. That means the light can go up, it goes out, and it goes down. So you basically have practically a halo of light around the street lighting fixture. The birds don't need it. The sky doesn't need it. Our second-story windows don't need it. We need the light on the ground, but the way the structure, the fixtures themselves are made, the technology improved, and you see a lot of the high-pressure sodium lights that have a globe, little bound globe under it. Again, that light is getting to the side as well as below. More recently, technology's improved so that they have what they call cutoff fixtures, and you can notice them. They're on Maple Avenue. The bottom of the fixture is flat. You see the fixture housing, and there's a flat glass globe on that. And that's an effort to try to get at that issue of light pollution. So one of the things that the International Dark Sky Association is focused on is light pollution. Those issues were listed in our 2004 greenhouse gas emissions reduction. The city's been aware of that and thinking about that for a long time. So that was the second component. And the other component had to do with the newness of the technology of LED. We had learned from others that the light level itself can be remotely adjusted. So we said, whatever fixtures we have to have the capacity to do that at some point in the future, whenever Pepco, as the lighting supplier, provides that. We want our fixtures to be higher level technology. None of these requirements met the current LED standards. The LED lights that the city had installed on Flower Avenue and Ethan Allen, as well as anywhere else, and in their standard offer of service and in the Public Service Approved Commission report, those criteria don't exist. So the city was putting a challenge to Pepco. We want to partner with you. We want to work with you to retrofit your lights. Here are our standards, which are up here, and yours are down there. At which point we didn't know whether Pepco would say, okay, thanks very much, but we already have our lights that have been approved, and that's all we're doing. We were lucky enough to have Barbara Gonzalez assigned as the project manager for this, and she worked very hard to identify fixtures and convince the powers that be, I can only assume, to move forward with Pepco, understanding that it's in the best interest of Pepco as a service provider, as well as residents and users, to meet these environmental requirements that really do have significance. So, I was proud that the city did that. I think the criteria is excellent, and even more happy that Pepco was able to get the engine at change going in whatever way it did and move that forward. One of the first things that Pepco did was to do an inventory, an actual inventory. We have photographs of every single light in the city. So now, for the first time in forever, literally since whatever the first street light was installed in the city, 19, I don't know what, we pay a bill each month based on an inventory, but no one ever compared apples to apples. So this was the first time that Pepco hired someone to come out, photograph, identify every single fixture. So we knew how high they were, what wattage they were, what technology they were, where they were. And through that process, we identified some lights that we were being charged for that weren't ours. We also identified lights that no longer existed and other changes that were made. So that was a helpful process to go through, both on Pepco's part to clean up their records, also on our part to understand. And it really illuminated this hunch that we had that across the city we have very different lighting supplies and lighting levels. The original light, that's been for decades has been the incandescent light, and that's been a favorite of people because it has a nice warm white light. There was a lot of discussion in the city years ago when we first started trying to move towards streetlight energy improvements about the loss of the incandescent light, and that was a really big deal because at that point the alternative was high pressure sodium. So I came to many council meetings to talk about high pressure sodium lights. We now have 80% of the lights in the city are high pressure sodium. Those are what are called yellow lights, crime lights. If you could turn back the clock and look 10 years ago, people were very upset that the incandescent lights were being removed, not only in Takoma Park, but elsewhere, replaced with high pressure sodium. They were energy efficient, but they were yellow. They distort the color. They give the impression of crime areas or parking lots or not something that was very attractive to a residential neighborhood. But this many years later, here we are, we found out that 80% of our lights are now high pressure sodium. Less than 10% of our lights remain incandescent. Anytime an incandescent light goes out and the fixture needs to be replaced, it doesn't get replaced in kind. There are no more incandescent fixtures. So every time an incandescent fixture goes out, high pressure sodium gets put in. The other thing that was a surprise to learn is we still have mercury vapor lamps in the city. The federal government outlawed mercury vapor lamps. You guys may know better than me. They don't get manufactured anymore because of the mercury. So Pepco went through and did a whole-scale removal and replacement of mercury vapors. And of course, what did they replace them with? High pressure sodium, because that was really the only alternative. So we still have a good number of mercury vapor lamps here in the city. And of course, a small but increasing number of LEDs. So that was helpful information to have. We also found that in the older neighborhoods, like Wards 1, Ward 3, that's where you're going to find more of your incandescent lights, the more historic looking lights. And in Wards 4, 5, and 6, you're going to find high pressure sodium almost exclusively. Also very interesting in the Wards 1 and 3, in the areas where you have more of the incandescent lights, you have a light almost on every pole, at sometimes every other pole. In some of the other neighborhoods, Wards 2, 4, 5, and 6, they're every 3 poles, they're farther apart. And when the lights are farther apart, they're often higher wattage. So you have a brighter high pressure sodium light at a greater distance. And so what we really have, if you looked at a lighting map of the city, is very inconsistent lighting levels. And in fact, we've got our least attractive lights in some of our lower income areas. And in the historic areas, it's more lit. However, because of the type of lighting itself, the incandescent lighting, it loses its lighting level quickly. So the light you actually have on the ground can vary by a number of different factors. So I think I've kind of gone through that piece. In the inventory, Pepco was also able to identify areas where we are overlit and where we are underlit. We have some 400-watt incandescent bulbs in the city. There's nowhere in the city that you need a 400-watt incandescent bulb. The average residential incandescent bulb is a 93-watt bulb. So there's areas, perhaps it was a crime wave, a lot of car break-ins. Those were the kind of things that may have caused some of those changes in the past. And so one of the things we're hoping to be able to do with this project is identify what the adequate light level is on our residential streets and put in a technology that helps to achieve that evenly throughout the city so that we don't have this disparity in the lighting levels. I know there's been a lot of interest and a lot of emails that I've seen, though I tried not to because I was on vacation. But I just wanted to quickly talk about definitions, because those are also, this is a very technical topic, and it's not something that we, get into in our day jobs unless you're Barbara or Jerry. But there's a couple of terms that I wanted to just define so that we can make sure when we're talking about things, we're talking about the same things. One is lumen, and lumen is basically a light level. You can go out with a light meter and measure at any location what the actual light is. So it doesn't matter what the source is, how many watts it is, what type it is, how much light do I actually have. So lumen is a very important term, because we want to make sure that we're on the same page about what the average light level is that we want when we walk down a street in Takoma Park. And where are the areas where we need different light levels based on the use, the commercial areas versus the residential areas. There's also the issue of wattage. Depending on the technology, the wattage levels can be all over the place, but wattage is basically a definition of the use of energy. How much energy, how much kilowatts does it take to make this light go? So wattage is an energy use, and you can get yourself real confused looking at the wattage levels of different lights, because the wattage level doesn't relate to the light output necessarily. It relates to the efficiency of the light and how much energy it takes to make that light work. So we have wattages for our existing street lights that range from 70 watt to 400 watts. Sometimes it tracks that, a 400 watt is more light than a 70 watt, but sometimes it doesn't if you're comparing an incandescent with a high pressure sodium. So it can be deceptive. The goal of the project, at least one major part of the goal, is to reduce our energy use, and that gets at wattage. So with LEDs, they use less energy to produce the light that they use. And lastly is the issue of Kelvin, or color temperature, or color rendering. When we discussed our decorative streetlights a while or so ago, you may recall this picture that we tried to float around to help get at that issue of the color. High pressure sodium lights, as I mentioned, are the yellow lights. They're at the bottom of the spectrum, generally about 2,000, 2,200 Kelvin. Incandescent lights that people typically like to see are the warm white lights. They range from 2,700 to 3,200 is considered a warm white light. Mercury vapor is more on the green-blue scale. And so Kelvin refers to light color. It doesn't refer to the light of the amount of light. It's simply the light color. And it is something that you can detect by the eye. You can tell if a light is yellowish or whitish or bluish. So it's one of the things that you can detect by your eye. I think I've already talked about cutoff fixtures and what those are, and shielding, which I'm going to leave to Pepco because I know there's been an issue raised by folks about shielding. In the past, what shielding meant was Pepco used to put a little metal plate on the back of the street lights to keep the light from shining into your house. With LED fixtures, because of the technology itself, it's not one single bulb, it's multiple little diodes. And so because you have those multiple diodes, you're able to direct and control the light in a much more finite way than you could when you had just one bulb in a fixture housing. And so what is critical for the LED lights in order to live well in a community is to be fixtures that direct the light down and not out and up. That was a critical component of the sample lights or the pilot lights that we installed. And I can personally attest, because I had a street light right outside my house, and that street light shines in my son's bedroom window. So we have these darkening shades that we had to put in to keep the light from, glaring in, and every time you walk in there, you kind of go, ah. As soon as the lights were changed out and the new LED fixture was put in, there is no light diffusion into the window anymore. You have to kind of go out, look out the window. You can see the light, you can see the fixture, you can see the light. It's not coming sideways anymore. It's just going down. So the technology allows itself to focus and adjust the lights. we spoke before about the concerns raised about the impact of color rendering and light, and those are serious health implications, but typically the reports and the studies are relating to different types of LED light exposures, screens, TVs, phones, and also to much higher Kelvin levels, 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin, not 3,000 Kelvin, which is what we're talking about. Just a couple more points. Light levels on the ground can be affected by a lot of things. In addition to the lumen, which I mentioned is the actual measure of light, it can also be affected by the age of a fixture. Fixtures, particularly high-pressure sodium incandescent, their light level drops drastically as they age. And we're not talking 50 years, we're talking 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I think the light age is 5 to 10 years for those types of fixtures. LED lights will also diminish with time. However, their rate of diminishment is less, and their lifespan is 20 years. So you've got a fixture that lasts a lot longer, requires less operation and maintenance. I also just wanted to point out, and maybe it's a statement of the obvious, is the street lights, the city doesn't own them. We have the privilege of paying the electricity and the operation and maintenance costs to Pepco. Pepco owns them. They're their lights. It's up to them to decide what maintenance they want to do, how they want to do it, what light type they offer. Of course, they have requirements through the Public Service Commission, and we can certainly get involved in that. But this program has always been one that's required a partnership between Pepco as the light owner and us as the recipient of the light and the people that pay. And so it's really behooves us to try to move forward in this project in a way that not only reduces energy, which is a goal of ours, reduces costs, but also ends up with a product that works in our neighborhood. I think on the cover sheet, we listed all the kind of benefits of the conversion, reducing the cost and the energy, more consistent light and light treatment throughout the city, less outages due to the longevity of the light, and then also what we were more recently able to find out is the actual cost of the project is much less than what we initially assumed when we were talking about this in 2016. We kind of laid it out that we thought this was going to be a $2 million project, and we wanted to make sure everybody knew that ahead of time, that we were talking big dollars, that was based on what we had done so far with a couple of smaller projects, the Flower Avenue Green Street project and the Ethan Allen project, where we were paying in the range of $1,200 or $1,400 per light fixture. We also were assuming making an assumption about the number of lights that needed to be converted. Now, of course, we have an actual number of our lights, so we can get much more specific. And through the process of working with Pepco on this, the cost of the LED light, which we thought would happen, they're going to, as they get more and more use, the cost is going to come down. But we're now looking at, much lower cost per LED light. And so the cost that we're talking about for this project of replacing almost 1,600 lights in the city is looking more to the tune of $370,000 instead of the initial estimates we had of $2 million. What we were also able to learn is that we're going to be eligible for an Empower Maryland grant, which is a great bit of news. We've used Empower Maryland grants for a lot of our building energy retrofits. Initially, we were told because Pepco owns the lights, we weren't going to, it's not an eligible program. Now it turns out it is an eligible program, so it's a benefit for us. It looks as if we could get a $260,000 maximum grant through the Empower Maryland program. Lockheed Martin folks have submitted our application. We've gotten preliminary approval, so it looks as if those numbers are pretty good. What that means is that the project cost actual outlay to the city is on the order of $110,000, $112,000. So, at some point, if we proceed, the city will need to talk about how it wants to fund that project. When we last met and talked, Pepco had offered a financing program. Since then, we've also learned that Empower Maryland has a 2-year zero-interest financing program that we could get involved in, or the city could look to fund it directly out of general fund based on the reduced nature of the cost. So I think what I hope I've tried to do is refresh everybody's memory or give you some new history explain some of the terms, and then also go over the benefits of moving forward in this project. Obviously, we're vested. We've been working on this for a long, long time, but ultimately, you as council has to make the decision. We're hoping through tonight and follow-up meetings that we're able to answer any other questions. We do have the pilot lights, or the proposed lights, installed on 3 streets in the city, all along Hickory Avenue, all along Erie Avenue, and all along Oswego Avenue. And so people have been able to see those and live with them, live around them, and just sort of see how it will look. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Jerry, and he could fill you in on any additional comments.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Pasternak. I'm the PEPCO Region Vice President, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to provide this briefing and overview of the streetlight conversion project for Takoma Park. As you heard from Daryl, with me is Barbara Gonzalez, who is a principal business project manager who's done years of remarkable work on this project for the city. I don't think people understand how committed she is to doing the right thing for the city, but she truly is, and she has a great team that works with her. And also in that corner, we have Roger Huggins and Fran Phillips, who are both with our Energy Savings for Business program. Over the last few years, LEDs have gone from something cities would love to have to the sector standard. LED streetlights are great for the environment. They consume much less energy than standard high-intensity discharge lights. They last significantly longer. They reduce greenhouse gas emissions and maintenance costs, and they contribute less to light trespass because they emit direct illumination. Over the past several years, PEPCO has taken several steps to facilitate the conversion of 2 LED streetlights by our municipal partners, because that's what we heard from our municipal partners. They wanted LEDs, and we had some barriers to overcome. So we've taken steps to overcome those barriers. For example, we lowered our streetlight tariffs and eliminated what would have operated as an economic disincentive to streetlight conversions. Second, as part of our 2018 to 2020 Empower Maryland proposal to the Maryland Public Service Commission, we proposed offerings that include incentives to municipalities to convert PEPCO-owned streetlights, which is something that couldn't happen before. And we're happy to note that the Commission approved our proposal, so that's why we're here tonight. What this means is that our municipal partners now have both lower tariffs and access to cash incentives to offset the costs of the fixtures and installation of LEDs. Takoma Park, as you heard from Daryl, is now poised to take advantage of these benefits and convert more than 1,500 incandescent, mercury vapor, and high-pressure sodium streetlights to LED. Our discussions with the city started 3 or 4 years ago, and we've picked up serious momentum over the past several months. We've identified the city's streetlights by light levels, type, and location. We've calculated the costs and incentives to convert those lights to LED, and we've calculated the city's anticipated savings, both in terms of reduced consumption, kilowatt hours, and lower energy bills. You have all those numbers and calculations from Daryl, although I would add that we reran some of those numbers, and our projections show that the city's savings will be closer to $100,000 a year. Which means that the savings alone could almost pay for the city's share of the project in a little over a year. And we also, as Daryl noted, through this program, can offer a 2-year interest-free loan to the city to pay its share of the project. So as I noted, you have those numbers. I won't go into more detail on that, but I do want to piggyback a little bit on what Daryl said about watts, lumens, and Kelvin, because I think it is critical to understanding the overall project. Watts are a measurement of power consumption. With traditional incandescent lights, typically the higher the wattage, meaning the brighter the output. So if you think of a 20-watt bulb, a 60-watt bulb, and a 100-watt bulb, the 100-watt bulb is generally brighter than the 20 or the 60. Even though the wattage is measuring electricity consumption, we think about those numbers as brightness, but they're really not brightness. It's a little tricky to compare incandescents to LEDs because there's no hard and fast rule to correlate wattage with output. So, as an example, one manufacturer's 9-watt LED may be equivalent in terms of the output of a 60-watt incandescent bulb, and another manufacturer may need a 12-watt LED to get that same output. So when you go to the store to buy your LEDs for your home, you want to look at the measure of brightness. You want to look not at the wattage, but the brightness, which is measured in lumens. So lumens is the measure of the total light output of a bulb, the brightness of the bulb. The higher the lumens, the brighter the light. The lower the lumens, the dimmer the light. So roughly speaking, a 60-watt incandescent bulb is equivalent to an 800 lumens LED, and a 100-watt incandescent bulb is roughly equivalent to a 1600 lumen LED. Again, these are not exact, and the equivalents can vary by manufacturer, but it gives you some idea in terms of lumens. Kelvin is the measurement used to describe the color temperature of a light source. This is a specification that gives a description to the warmth or coolness of a light source. It doesn't measure brightness. So by convention, yellowish colors, like the flames of a fire, are considered warm, and bluish colors, like the light from an overcast sky, are considered cool. So that's your range: warm, very warm, cool. Higher Kelvin temperatures in the 4,000 or 5,000 K range are considered cool, and lower temperatures, lower color temperatures in the 2,700, 3,000 K range are considered warm. So the lower the Kelvin temperature, the warmer the color. It's a little confusing, it's a little counterintuitive, but that's the scale. A few months ago, and if you think of the bluish light, sometimes when you're driving, you get those blue bright headlights coming up from behind you. Those are probably in the 6,000 lumen range. Typical bulb, warmer bulb that you might see in somebody's house or on the street would be in the 2,700, 3,000 range. The difference between 2,700 and 3,000 is pretty much imperceptible. Remember, on a street light, you're looking at the light down on the street, probably about 30 feet below where the bulb is. So the difference between 2,700 and 3,000 is going to be measurable close to the source. But as you get 30 feet away on the sidewalk, to the human eye, it's practically imperceptible. So a few months ago, we installed several LED fixtures on Erie Avenue, Oswego Avenue, and Hickory Avenue so that residents can see how they look and function. Those fixtures and the replacements that we are proposing meet all the criteria that was mandated by the council in the 2016 resolution. They're dark sky compliant, 3,000 Kelvin, and address what areas that may be overlit or underlit throughout the city. I want to add that the brightness, the lumens of the proposed LED replacements are either the equivalent of what is already on a pole, and in some cases even less than what's on the pole, because we saw some areas where we looked at the wattage, as Darrell noted, and we said, you don't need that kind of equivalent in an LED. So we lowered the lumens in some cases. but we didn't increase any of the bulbs. So we do not increase the lumens, the equivalent of what's on the poles now. And finally, I'd like to thank your staff, particularly your Public Works Director, for their hard work, for their dedication and commitment to this project. We wouldn't be here today without their determination to see this project through to its implementation. And with that, I'll conclude and be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. That's why I have these folks behind me. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight and for that explanation. And thank you to our Head of Public Works for also going back and talking about the history of what got us here. I know a number of people have some questions to ask, and I guess I'll kick us off on there's some feedback that we've received about the lights that have been put in, the pilot lights that we're looking at, and I want to make sure that we all understand how to think about that feedback and interpret it. So if folks, even though, as you said, the lumens were equivalent or less, when folks are looking at if we get some feedback that they seem brighter to them and almost too bright, does that fall into lumens? Where does that fall? How would you interpret that feedback?
So I would interpret that as brightness, which is the lumens. It's not the color of the light, it's the brightness, and brightness is the lumens. And again, as Daryl noted, what people look at to compare could very well be an older high-pressure sodium fixture that has experienced some deterioration in the brightness over time. It's not the same fixture that was installed however many years ago when it was brand new and much brighter than it is today. So I could understand why people would say that the LEDs are brighter. They are brighter, but it's a lumens question.
And just following up on that, I know Ms. Braithwaite talked about our ability to be able to dim the lights. Would that, adjusting that, is that the same as adjusting the brightness? I want to make sure I get all my terms and everything correct.
Hi, good evening, and thank
Hi.
you for having us. And thank you, let me say thank you, Darren and staff, for helping. I think they were going to throw me out of the city, but actually they didn't, so thank you for having me. The dimming, the lights that we are hope to install at Takoma Park will be it has actually a dimmable driver inside. In the old days, inside of fixturing, if I'm getting too technical, tell me to stop, and I'll go back. In the old days, you have something called ballast. A ballast is something that goes in the light and produces a light. Nowadays, you have something called driver, and that's basically what drives the current. So if you're going to dim the lights, for dimming a specific lighting, you're going to have a way of controlling a control system, a software, if you will, and that's part of what we think it perhaps be the next step for Takoma Park. That's doable. Is smart cities is about putting cameras, emission detections, and a host of all the devices that can live there, because now you do have the foundation, which is that fixture. The fixture is smart ready. So you will be able to do exactly what you want to do in the future. Right now, it's going to be for the 70 watts that you have, and I'm talking about consumption. I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm going to talk about consumption. The 70 watts, you pay a certain amount of dollars to Pepco, my employer, per kilowatt hour for 70 watt. You're going from 70 watt to 35 watts. That means the consumption is going to be lower. So in that thing alone, you're going to be saving energy. You're not going to be using as much as you did. And you're going to have a different type of illumination. You're going to have a more direct illumination, more focusing illumination, and you actually put light to light up the areas. And for safety reason, is also a deterrent having a correct level of lighting. But you will be able to do that in the future. These fixtures, when I put it up, you're going to have a smart photo cell, and they're going to turn on and off, just like your lights do today. But it will be ready. So when the city is ready, when I go, I'll come back if you want me to. And when I go to a smart lighting and integrating this into a smart city, you can do that. You don't have to change any lighting. It will be dimmable.
So the lights we'll get now won't be dimmable, or will be?
Well, in order for you to dim, you have to send a signal to the light to tell it to dim at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have any system, we didn't talk about any software or anything like that, any technology. We have the technology, the technology exists. My job was to replace the fixture in accordance to your requirement. And that requirement includes for the future. So it will be dimmable ready, but in order to be dim, some signal have to go to that fixture.
Is there a cost that we could be quoted soon to know what that would be? If that's something that could be done as part of this project, it would be very nice.
Well, you want to put the lights out first, try it, see it, and then any software or any devices, it can be done. But I will always recommend to try to put the fixtures up, make sure that they turn on and off, because technology is a great thing. We love technology, but it has to be applicable, because I don't want to leave your city in the dark, and I don't want to think one that failed to me is not good for me. So we need to make sure that we put the lights up, it's working fine, and then we move on to the next level, which is smart city, which I think is something that you guys need to think about.
But the question was, at the point we decide, okay, now we've got them up, they're working, we would like to dim them,
We're ready.
and how much would it cost us?
Well, I don't know the money part. I don't know. We will have to get back to you.
We just want you to say nothing so that we can pay for it.
So we can just turn it on.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're very happy about, I'm sorry to interrupt here, we're very happy to go from a $2 million estimate to, $112,000 estimate. And there are many things, and to reduce the annual cost significantly, is wonderful.
I'm glad you're happy. I'm very glad you're happy.
But I think that, from the original council direction and from our interest, we would also like to have that control. And so if there's an estimate that we can get so that as we're looking at budgeting purposes and timing of these things, it'd be very helpful to know.
Okay,
And so that
we
think about
can
that.
get back to you on that.
That'd be great.
I don't have that information.
Right, no, that's fine. And so that, I guess just to, because we have a number of residents who have contacted us about the brightness of the lights. So the dimming function wouldn't necessarily address the brightness. What you're talking about, the dimming function, if I understand it, would be maybe turning it off or much lower when it wasn't needed, or I guess I'm kind of
Well, the dimming
confused.
function is like, it will, you will be able to dim a specific light. Once you have the software, you'll be able to dim a specific light or everything, or a group of lights, if
Okay.
that's the case. The driver inside of the light allows you to do that by actually lowering the current on the fixture, and you can do that. But for that, you need a more sophisticated software. Right now, whatever goes up, and again, I actually can understand the fact that they will see it differently. I do. Because like it was said before, and I don't want to sound like a repetitious person, you have a fixture that was up, I don't know how many years. I've been here when we changed the lights, so I was part of the construction crew. So some of the stuff is real old. older than me, I'm not, and real old. And lighting have a life, and life deteriorate of lighting over years. So if you live in a neighborhood that you just moved in 20 years ago, it's not the same light that you see today. What happened, we get used to it. And when we get used to it, we don't see it, but from public safety, you want to actually see where you're walking. I came to Takoma, I think I am more in Takoma Park than I'm actually my city, where I live. And I came to Takoma Park one night, I saw some people walking in the street, and those are streets that we put the lights on. And I did ask, I didn't tell them who I was, and I didn't have any Pepco ID, or a vest, or a hard hat. So I did ask. And a lot of people just went like this. I didn't get any negative feedback. But I think it's important to listen to everybody's voices, just like I listen to your voices. I see that. So whatever we can do to make people happy, we will try to do that. But I cannot change the color of the lights. There's certain things that we can change, but certain things that we can learn from. And by the way, there's a lot of people, and let me congratulate you, and I'm going to sit down, I don't want to get my soapbox, because a lot of people are looking what Takoma Park are doing. You guys are bold. You guys will be the first city that I know of in the state of Maryland have dark sky certification. And I think that is huge. You should be very proud of the work you're doing here. And because there will be no light emission going to the sky, and if we can prevent something like that, why not doing it? The other potential solution, if it's a lighting coming into somebody's house, Darryl talked a little bit about that. In the fixture itself, there's a little screen that I can put that no lighting come back. But keep in mind, these things are 28, 30 feet high and a 42-foot pole, and sometimes the arm is 3 feet, sometimes 6 feet, sometimes it's 12 feet. And what you want to provide is what I call maximum illumination for less consumption. And you put lights for that purpose. So I'm sorry. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. And I have other questions, but I'll open it up to my colleagues now. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you guys for coming out today. Jerry, thank you. I appreciate it. We've talked about this for a long time. Thank you, Darryl, for implementing the council's resolution on this. Regarding the, let's call it the dashboard, the software, the council passed this racial equity policy a while ago. And in the city of Seattle, they found that there's some communities, some areas in the city that do not file complaints regarding, street lights that are out, right? For many different reasons, right? With the smart software or the smart light fixtures, will you automatically be able to know if a light is out without someone having to call?
Okay, yes and yes, but with these lights that we're gonna put on, you will be able, right now, even though you don't have a smart street light, Darryl is going to be able, you can go to a website that you can see when the lights is out. However, this new street light, I'm going to put something that is called a photocell, but in my world it's called a node, N-O-D-E. It's a smart node. It's actually, it's going to send signal to Pepco and let me know when you are out. So my goal is to make sure that we know when you're out before Darryl calls us. In the meantime, so this is a smart node. And you see it like a photocell, and turn the light on and turn the light off. But at the same time, it has technology inside that have to tell me where the light is. It has a GPS inside. It has technology that's going to tell me when that consumption is low, it's no consumption, that light had to be out. So in the meantime, while you go into a software, but with the software, you'll be able to do a lot of things. Now, keep in mind, the mayor mentioned about dimming, okay? Keep in mind that we are talking about what we call it a street light, but these are road lights, Okay, these are for this. This is not for a park
Right.
or a area lighting. When you have area lighting in San Diego, in area lighting, you can walk around, the lights dim down when there's nobody walking, and then when somebody walk, it sort of dim out. Usually in road light type of, and not necessarily in the neighborhoods, a lot of cities don't do a lot of dimming for that reason. To the contrary, the police department may ask you in some areas to increase the lighting level because of security, safety, and likes.
Okay. You know, last year I was president of the Montgomery County chapter of the Maryland Municipal League, and a lot of municipalities in Montgomery County want LEDs. So have you guys talked to the other municipalities? Where's that going?
We are currently engaged in conversations and discussions with several municipalities in the county.
Okay, good.
They're all going down this same path. They're all
Excellent.
trailing Takoma Park.
All right. And my last question has to do with, you guys are calling this the Internet of Things, I guess, right? So there is a big technology jump that's about to come around called 5G. Will 5G be on your light poles?
I think that's a decision that has to be made by the council. I think the county council is looking at that issue. I don't know if you've had that issue brought to you. We do allow, we are mandated by the FCC to allow telecommunications facilities on our poles. So consistent with some of the mandates that are directed at us, we do allow it. But that is, that's an area that is being debated and contested, and I don't know where it's going to end up.
And I lied, I had one more question. Because, you know, it's always good to see you, Jerry.
Thank you.
You know, I chaired a committee on utilities last year through MML, and you were present. And a lot of elected officials brought up the issue of down lines, you know, from your poles. Is there any way you guys could tag the lines so that, you know, whether it's Comcast knows it's their line or whether it's RCN or Verizon? Because right now, residents complain about the lines, but everyone says it's not my line, but it's always your pole.
So we take very seriously every report of a downed wire, and we recommend that everybody treat a hanging wire as if it were a live electric wire. We don't know what it is, and in most cases, the person who sees it doesn't know what it is. So don't take the chance. Call it in and report it. What we do is we dispatch crew out there to look at it. If they determine that it's not one of our lines, they typically do tag it as not a Pepco line. Beyond that, I don't know that they're in a position in the field at that moment to know whether it's Comcast or Verizon, but they will know if it's one of ours.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Caustic.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your work on this, and to Daryl for all of your work on this over the years. I think there are a lot of advantages to moving to LEDs that you mentioned, the energy efficiency, improving the disparities throughout the city, and just creating a better, I think, general atmosphere throughout the city. But I know there has been concern from some residents about both the coloration of the lights and the brightness, which was mentioned a little bit earlier. So I just had a few questions related to those things. In terms of the dimmability of the lights and the capacity to do that in the future, what would the range of, I guess it would be lumens, what would the range of lumens be at the highest level to the lowest level on these lights that you installed?
Well,
In terms of dimming them? Or
Yeah.
They would, what we're looking at is the, well, I want you to answer that.
okay. You can change the, without any software and without any settings, you can go, what I'm trying to purchase, or what I purchase is the equivalent of what you have out there. Okay? So most of your lights in the city as 70 watt, right? So that's almost 90% of that. So, so I'm replacing it with the equivalent of that in LED, which is 35 watt.
Okay.
If I have to go to a 30 watt, obviously the lumen equivalent, and every manufacturer, Darryl made a great point about that, is different. Watt and lumen sort of are in the family, but not quite. Cousins or brothers and sisters. They're related, but then it's difficult. You don't want to create a one-to-one relationship. The ones that I'm thinking about changing your light, or the one that you have out there right now, are the equivalent of a 70 watt is a 35 watt LED. That is around 3,900 lumens. Okay? Now, if you think about a 400 watt light that you do have right now in Takoma Park, when that light was almost new, I don't know what it is now, I'm sure it's old, like I said, was around 50,000 lumens. So depending on the light itself, depending on something else, what I'm trying to do is give you the same level of illumination that you have, but it's going to be looking a little bit different. It's not going to be all over the place up there. It's going to be spread around the surface, and it may have the appearance to be brighter than actually is.
And so if we were able to dim them, if we chose to go that route in the future, they would be able to be dimmed lower than
Yes.
the 39.
And you may have a desire to dim in some places and some other places not. If you have a street that nobody have an issue with it, you may don't do anything. And if you have to do a specific one, you have to look at case by case, because the other stuff is this: you may have a street that have, like, that'll make a point, you know, one pole every X number of feet, but you may have a street that have one pole here, and across the street have the other pole with the lighting. So now the lighting distribution is a little bit different. So, but if there's a specific locations that you want us to further look into it, we can do that. But if it's somebody that just doesn't like that particular light, you can dim, you can change it, you can even put a kitchen light bulb. It's not going to change that, because you know you have to accept people's opinion about that, and that's understandable because it's going to look different than what they have there before.
So in the situation that you described, or Daryl described, where you have in Ward 6, for example, lights that are farther apart from each other, will you be adding lights there to remedy that situation?
No, my scope of this work was not to add anything else. We were going to replace all the lights that we have that belong to Takoma Park in existing fixtures and existing poles. And I'm sure that if Darryl wants to add a few more for whatever light, the lighting levels appear to be, with this new fixture, it will be much better than what it is today. That's for sure.
And so my sense in terms of the complaints about brightness is not so much that it's just brighter in general, because I think there are potentially advantages of that, but that it's sort of a direct glare into your eye as you're walking by, whereas the ones that have kind of a glaze on them aren't as they don't catch your eye as much, or they don't kind of seem to glare into your eye as much. Is there anything that can be done about that?
If the glare, in most cases, is referring to the color temperature, and I know that they already told you a whole bunch of stuff about color temperature, and I'm gonna repeat. My colleagues, they have done a good job.
Yeah, I don't, just,
But,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt on that, because I do have some questions about color temperature, but I actually don't, my question actually isn't about the color temperature on that. I mean that it feels more like an exposed bulb than something with a fixture, than something with, a cover across it.
When you look at it, you will see a brighter light. It is a brighter light, and when you look at it, you sense that. As you walk by it, it will be brighter than what was previously there, but there shouldn't be any glare at, again, 28, 30 feet below the light.
And these are little LEDs, little diodes actually, that are point towards, the picture is like this, so it's sort of point towards the street. So, and I know exactly what you say, because sometimes when you look at certain vehicles that they come at you, that's 6,000, that's lumens, so it's, so I can understand. But I can change that.
Okay.
But I would like to get some specific location if you do have it, so maybe we can look into it. And instead of putting maybe a 35-watt LED, I can try to put a 30. I'll share something with you. There's some locations that I changed the wattage in some street, and the people in that street cannot tell the difference. So, so we have Hickory Avenue, 2 fixtures that have different wattage. And again, this is consumption. But if somebody see the glow, they will see it on all of those lights. So.
Okay. So then, related to the color aspect, my understanding is that in DC, DDOT has identified the 2700 Kelvin as what they want to put into the residential neighborhoods. Are you looking at differences between the commercial areas of Takoma Park versus residential, and are you considering the 2700?
So we're not doing the DC lighting. They own and maintain their own lights, so we don't know. My understanding is that they are looking into 2,700, 3,000 different options. And, around the country, you'll find municipalities that have done 2,700, 3,000, 4,000. So it all depends on what you as the customer would like to do.
Would it be possible to do 2700?
Everything is possible.
So as I said, you're the customer. We'd have to do some research. It would likely be possible to do it. It would result in a several-month delay in starting the project. More importantly, we're in a current budget year that has the funding to do this project. If we are pushed out a couple of months, the likelihood is we'll not have that funding. It's not in our 2019 budget, so we're probably looking at 18-month delay to do that change.
Okay.
And again, you're the customer, will do what you ask. We would probably suggest that folks look long and hard at the real difference between 2,700 and 3,000.
Okay. And then my final question, if we do go, whether it's 2,700 or 3,000, I think along Flower Avenue, the lights there are actually 4,000, if I'm remembering right. Would those be replaced along with the rest of them to bring them to the same level?
We can do that, but Darrell mentioned that they wanted to keep those lights the way they were. So I didn't count on Flower Avenue because actually I installed my lights in a street adjacent to Flower Avenue, so everybody have the opportunity to compare Flower Avenue with that. But if Darrell tell me to do it, I'll do whatever she says.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it?
All right. Councilmember Kovar.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Based on what I've heard from residents, and there is this question about some people finding that the newer lights appeal to them in certain ways and others find that they don't. And I think what I'm wondering is whether it's possible just to, I think you mentioned this, but maybe I didn't quite get it. On the same street, could we have a sample of 2,700 and 3,000 and the sample with lesser lumens? Because to me, it's not clear from the complaints that I've, or concerns or expressions of questions I've received from people, whether their concern is about brightness as measured by lumens or color as measured apparently in Kelvin. And so if the whole street's the same, there's nothing to really compare it to. So would it be possible just to have, you know, very specifically designate, hey, there's two right next to each other. This one's got 2,700, this one's got 3,000, this one has this many lumens, this has that. And everybody could just look and figure it out, because I don't feel like right now we're sort of comparing, or I feel like we are comparing apples and oranges or lumens and kelvins.
I didn't purchase any 2700. I have none because my direction from the city was basically 3,000 based on the resolution. So it's possible, but I will have to purchase those fixtures.
Well, what about the brightness then? Can those be adjusted so that you can have the 3,000 at various brightness levels? Because I think that if lumens is a measure of brightness, that seems to be a crucial question here.
Yes, but the lumens are not adjustable in any street light that I have known of. When you buy a fixture, they have some degree of illumination based on the type of fixture that you buy, the energy consumption, and usually they tell you. But maybe there's something that adjustable, and uniformity also around the city is important.
Well, I think uniformity is important at the end, but when we're trying to evaluate what might be appropriate, I've heard from a surprising number of people who have concerns, and I haven't personally had a chance to go look at the test lights yet because I was out of town and so on. But I think what I'm saying is if there's something that they could be compared to out at the site, that would make it easier.
I understand. I just don't, the standard in PEPCO is 4,000 degree Kelvin. For Takoma Park, that's what you have in Flower Avenue. For Takoma Park, and based on the specification, we got 3,000 degree. I don't have any, that's the truth of the matter. I will have to research it and try to get some 2,700 to put it for testing or something, but I don't have any.
But could if the wattage varies on the same light, could that have an effect of reducing the brightness, or is that not really how that works?
Well, in Hickory Avenue, I have two fixtures that have a lower wattage, and I welcome anyone to go to Hickory Avenue and try to find out which of those fixtures, because they are not side by side. They are embedded with the rest of, and they're supposed to have less lumen than the ones that, the rest of them. So I did make some changes on some of that, on the wattage, on the energy consumption, but on the lumens, I cannot control that.
Right, but I guess, but are you saying that, I mean, if the wattage was even lower, would that have or it can't be the case that any wattage is going to produce the same result, right?
Just speaking from experience on the Hickory Avenue case, you can't tell which light is the 30 watt versus the 35 with your eye. If you brought the light meter out, you could tell. So the ability for our eyes to distinguish the difference, it's too fine a difference, especially that far away.
But are those the only two options, 30 or 35?
Well, it's a reduced wattage. I don't know that you can get any lower than 30 watt for the
Well-
high-pressure sodium. The issue with the color rendering, it's also going to be something similar, that your eye will not be able to detect the difference between 2700 and 3000. It's too imperceptible. What is happening, I think, is the technology is so different that the brightness of that LED, just like when you put them in your house they tend to be in a fixture that looks like a bulb. On a streetlight, it's not. It's pinpoints of light coming out in a diode, so it's just
Right.
entirely different technology. And so you have to learn not to look, like if I looked at that, if I glanced up at that light, it'll hurt my eyes. If I just look at you all and don't glance up at that light, you're well lit, I'm well lit, the camera can see me. So it's kind of a retraining with the technology. And unfortunately, that's where you go with LEDs. The intensity of the technology itself is what causes that. If you look up at it, it's going to leave a retinal impression in your eye. You wouldn't get that with a high-pressure sodium light or an incandescent light. If you stared at it for a couple of seconds, you would, but with LED, it's kind of immediate with the appearance of the light. And that's just the technology. There is no shield for that. There's no way to cover it and make those diodes kind of, can we put frosted glass over the diodes? It just doesn't exist in the streetlight technology. We've been trying to address it in the decorative light technology with the prismatic globes, and so that's a way that they try to affect your eyes' impact with the diodes themselves. But with streetlight technology right now, it's the diodes directing that light down, so it's just a different technology. The light at the ground level is equivalent to what was initially designed for that street, with that type of light level on the ground. But when you're looking up at the fixture itself, you're going to see a much different experience.
Can I
Okay.
just, sorry, Peter, Councilmember Kovar, can I just?
don't think I'm going to ask anything else.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to interrupt, because, Ms. Braithwaite, when you talked about shielding, I'm a bit I just want to make sure I understand this, because the AMA recommendations is that all LED lighting should be properly shielded.
Right.
Do we know what the AMA is recommending there versus
Well,
what we all
they're-
talked about
they're
tonight?
also, AMA is not dealing with the dark sky compliant, night sky compliant. So it's apples and oranges.
Okay.
The AMA is making a more blanket statement. These lights should be shielded, meaning they should either have the ability to have a block to the house behind or the sidewalk behind, or they should be dark sky compliant lights that don't emit light up and out. If you have an LED that doesn't emit light up and out but only down, you don't need to shield it because the light is directed at the ground. So the AMA is basically saying, if you don't have a dark sky compliant light, which there's lots of LED streetlights on the market that are not dark sky compliant, it's not an easy thing to get their certification. They have to have the full cutoff ability, no light emitted to the side or above the fixture. So if you don't have a dark sky compliant fixture and you're using another type of LED fixture, you should have the ability to shield it so that it's not a dispersing light in an unwanted area. Even with these lights, you can disperse light to an unwanted area or to the back. Basically, the way the lights that we have now, they go down in kind of a box. So they're trying to illuminate the street. They're trying to illuminate behind the pole to the sidewalk behind. If for some reason that direction of light to the sidewalk behind is problematic, you can put a shield on it to push that light to the street and less behind itself. But it's not going out, it's going down. So there is some possibility of shielding with these lights, but it's not the kind of shielding that you're thinking. And the AMA statement is a broad range, generic statement about all types of LEDs. We also have LEDs on on our decorative globes. So those, the entire fixture is a glowing light, so it's coming out. And we have the ability to shield in there in a similar way. It has a metal plate that would be directed in whatever area you didn't want to get the direct impact of the LED lighting. So there's shielding available for those. So the AMA is talking about all types of LED lights and all types of functions. With the lights that we're proposing to have, based on the nature of the way they're designed, they don't have the dispersion of light to the, up and out. And they do have the ability to shield if necessary, based on closeness of a house to the street, or, I don't know what the conditions might be that would warrant that.
And you talked about dark sky compliant, or we called it certified by the International Dark Skies. I've had residents ask me, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I believe, I understood from Barbara that the manufacturer that they've selected is a dark sky certified fixture. As I was just saw an email that Mike Tidwell forwarded me from the International Dark Sky Association. They don't have a copyright of dark sky, so any manufacturer can call their light dark sky compliant or dark sky. But if they start using the words like certified, I think Mike, you may remember that the type of title itself. There's a certain certification, just like UL listing. You
Right.
can say your light, your fixture is tested and meets all standards, which means nothing. But if they have the UL stamp on there, it's gone through the required testing protocol. So the manufacturer of the lights that Pepco's proposing have gone through that process and are certified, not just compliant, not just friendly, not just whatever.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
To add to that point is that I went to the Dark Sky Certification website to make sure that the vendors that I selected were coming from the recommendation. And I do have a certificate from that company.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman DeBala.
Yes, thank you. So like many of us, we went for a walk a couple nights ago, and we were on Hickory, and we couldn't tell the difference. But what we did notice was that the directional part of this, the dark sky shielding, it goes straight down, and we went up on a couple of people's lawns, we won't say who, and it really does, it's very different. So that part's pretty cool. My question has to do with dark sky certified. Is there a 2700 that's certified now, and what is does it cost more? And is it less or more or the same energy efficiency?
To my knowledge, the dark sky certification, the maximum temperature that you can have is 3,000. So anything below 3,000. And usually for this type of application, it's either 2,700 or 3,000. That's my understanding.
Okay. Well, I guess you don't need part 2 and 3 then, about the cost and the efficiency, if it doesn't.
I'm sorry?
I had 3.
I think you did ask a question, which was, if I heard it right, what would be the cost difference of a 2700?
I don't know. I
We'd have
didn't.
to look into that.
We have to look into that.
All right.
I didn't research.
And same on the energy efficiency rate, the wattage. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Searcy.
Thank you all so much for bearing with us, given that it's almost 9:30. The ward that I represent is one of the wards that was mentioned earlier as having the crime lights. And so one of 2 questions for you all. One relates to proximity to large commercial spaces that are already using LED lights for the purpose of their signage. So most of the Crossroads area, I'm starting to see more of the different businesses use these big, bright LED to advertise their businesses. So to what extent do you all take into account that light when upgrading or adding LED lights to the various light posts around?
Want me to answer that?
Go ahead, you try it.
Okay. I look at the street light that were there, whatever neighborhood or road or that we were in, we looked at the light, what is there? What should we replace it with? What is the LED equivalent of that application? Where are the poles? How high is the fixture in that pole? Is there any other obstructions, trees, whatever? to make sure that we deliver the same level of illumination. I didn't look at commercial property because I actually wasn't looking at the commercial property. I was actually looking at the, unless I found a street light that was commercial, and we found some, and we took that all over there, and that light didn't belong to the city. So we removed it from the city inventory. But I didn't take a look at the commercial property, but I was more focused on the street light, the pedestrian sidewalk. Do you have a sidewalk behind it? You have none. What should be the level of illumination? Is this a street light in the middle of a 4-lane road, or is it middle of a 2-lane road? Are we talking about the middle of the block, or are we talking about in the corner? So that's what my focus was.
So in theory, I'm just trying to make sure I understand because I've learned so much about lights tonight. In theory, the Pepco poles, in theory, would shed the light down,
Yes.
right? And so if we have signage that is designed to shed LED lights out, then they shouldn't, given the concept of LED, the light should be going in different directions, so it shouldn't, in theory, light up the sky. Is that a fair assessment of how these two worlds may work together?
It could be a fair assessment. Keep in mind that a lot of signage out there, because they have to advertise something or put a name of something, they're actually projecting, we call it emitting, lighting out. So you can read that sign. And I don't know of many signs that are darkest. The darkest sky certification is something.
No, they're bright.
new.
They're bright blue,
They're
white
new for
light.
the
Yeah.
city, and they're usually 5,000, 6,000 degree Kelvin. So it's a lot of lighting. But I didn't. I was actually. I saw it, but I wasn't pay attention to that. I was paying attention to you, to your poem. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so much, in fact, some of the work that we did with multifamily buildings and the energy retrofits, we had to kind of talk them down from huge LEDs on the rooftop of the building shining down into the parking lot. So a lot of it has to do with function, and it's very obvious that you can get way overlit at like an airport runway with these lights and greatly reduce your energy use, but you've just lit up an area in a very unhealthy way. So there is a lot of issues that that could be addressed with commercial lighting, standards for commercial lighting, time of day where it has to be turned off or on, and elevation of the lighting. Like if you have the lights on top of the Hampshire Towers,
Right.
You could see it probably from a mile away. Yeah. So.
And so in terms of, and I don't know if this is more, I think this is more of a comment for my colleagues. What was mentioned earlier is the fact that throughout the city, there are different types of lights that are being used. And I'm raising one concern. I appreciate the point raised about uniformity, because I think that's important. But I also want to keep in mind the perspective that people who may be raising concerns about the lights that have been installed on their street, their perception is based on what they had before, and what they had before is completely different from what we have, for example, in my ward, where I receive a lot of complaints from residents that it's very dark, kids telling me when they're getting off the bus in the winter and it's dark, trying to walk home and not quite feeling safe. So I just want to encourage my colleagues to kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about 3,000 versus 2,700, which isn't really that different to the naked eye, but could mean the world to other parts of the city that is really poorly lit right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm seeing no other lights on at the moment. I just want to agree with my colleagues and say thank you very much for coming out tonight and giving us a lesson in lighting and clarifying the terms. I think there are at least two things, if not more, to follow up on, which is the dimming and the cost for that and the feasibility for that. And then Councilmember Kovar and a number of us raised questions about the option of the 2700 to look into that, and possibly maybe we could reach out to some folks in DC and find out what they're thinking, or maybe we could borrow one or go on a field trip if they've installed a 2700 somewhere to take a look. So I think all of us are eager to move forward with this project. I should speak for myself. I know Ms. Braithwaite has been working on it longer than I have, but I've been on this council long enough to remember when we first started talking about it. We are committed in this community to doing bold and innovative things and to fighting climate change. And I will just say that the last 2 days, the heat index hit over 105. My daughter runs cross country for Blair, and they actually had to cancel their meet today because of the heat index. And so these are real consequences of what's happening, and the fact that we can move forward with energy efficiency in our community and make such a big leap forward is very exciting. So I know we spent a lot of time tonight really getting into the weeds and thinking a lot about this, because we want to also make sure that we're doing something that is beneficial for our community and that will be embraced by for our residents. And so it is a change, and we want to do it well and do it so everyone is excited about this project. So thank you for taking the time with us tonight, and we look forward to continuing working together.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Great. All right. So I hope the folks from who are here to talk to us about the proposed waiver of the city option to purchase 7905 Flower Avenue and Montgomery County's interest in exercising its right of first refusal are excited to be here and to have gotten that lesson in lighting that we all received tonight. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Daines.
Good evening. As the council is aware, you have an opportunity this evening to hear presentations for two affordable housing projects. The first involves the acquisition and renovation of a vacant 10-unit building that's located in Councilmember Smith's ward. The second, if approved or supported by the council, would result in a reduction of the operating costs associated with two recently renovated 6-unit affordable housing properties just down the street from here. Joining us this evening to present the proposal to acquire and renovate 7906 Flower Avenue are representatives from Montgomery County Housing and Community Affairs Department and the National Center for Families and, excuse me, I get it backwards every time, I'm sorry, National Center for Children and Families. Kenneth Sinfeth, who is the Senior Planning Specialist with the county, and Dr. Cheryl Chapman, who is the Executive Director of the National Center for Children and Families. As noted in the cover memo that the mayor referenced, the specific request is that the City Council waive its rights to acquire the property under the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Law and to endorse the county's purchase of the property under their right of first refusal legislation.
Good evening. In the spirit of time, I think it's safe to say that Ms. Daines has summarized very well, very clearly, what the Department of Housing and Community Affairs is interested in doing in reference to the specific property. I will restate, I think she stated in her comments that the address is actually 7906 Flower Avenue versus what I think was previously stated as 7905. The Department of Housing and Community Affairs is interested in acquiring this property under our right of first refusal law, which is Chapter 53A, and as Ms. Daines indicated, is very similar to the City of Takoma Park's tenant purchase law. This property is being sold, and under the right of first refusal law, every property that is sold, the seller must give notice to the county in reference to the property being sold, and the county has the opportunity to review that particular contract and make a decision as to whether it would be interested. The seller actually does have to give notice to not only the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, but also the Housing Opportunity Commission, and in the event that the property is occupied, the tenants in the property, and if they choose upon themselves to decide to create a tenant association to possibly exercise their right to purchase and step into the shoes of the third-party buyer. We have, I'm happy to say we have successfully done this about a couple of years ago. We came to the City Council, Takoma Park, and requested the approval to purchase 2 properties on Lee Avenue, as Ms. Daines indicated, which has been successfully done by Coalition Homes, which is an affiliate of the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless. And in this case, under our ROFA law, we normally purchase properties and work in collaboration with a local nonprofit. In the event of this particular property, we're choosing to collaborate with the Mrs. Chapman here, the National Center for Children and Families. We've had a very successful relationship in working with them in the past and doing development in other properties dealing with affordable housing and preservation of affordable units. This property is a 10-unit property, as was indicated, that is vacant, and we're looking forward to purchasing it. It has 10 units. We have conducted a brief tour of the building, and we've also engaged the services of a architect to give us a preliminary estimation of what it may cost to do the building. And so far, we're pretty comfortable with that. The acquisition price of the property is $735,000, which is $73,500 per unit. And we normally don't see those types of acquisition prices in various parts of the county, and so that's one of the reasons why properties such as this gain our attention, and particularly if they're vacant, where it gives an opportunity to return them back to the housing stock and to create and preserve affordable housing. Based on our analysis, we are going to be moving forward based on hopefully the council's approval of our request. The property contains 10 units as I indicated, but based on the condition of the units that we saw in our initial preliminary review of the property back in early August, we feel that we may wind up having less than 10 units, possibly 8, based on some configuration issues that we think we may have to address. The property is rather old. The owner indicated at our visit that the property is at least 80 years old. And so we feel that the property will go through an extensive or total gut rehabilitation, if you will. And we know that the cost may be somewhat high based on having to meet the current code requirements. But as I mentioned, with the similar project we did with Coalition Homes, that too was a gut rehabilitation, and we're really looking forward to doing what we have to do to take care of it. We've placed an estimate of approximately $2 million to $2.4 million. However, that may be a little high, but we want to estimate on the high side because sometimes when you're doing total rehabilitation or gut rehabilitation, things can pop up that were unforeseen and unanticipated. So if the cost comes in a lot lower, we'll be naturally happy with that. That's basically a real summary of what we're doing. Dr. Chapman here will actually share some information on the potential, her organization, and the things that we've done with her organization in the past, and the clients or the actual tenants that will be occupying the property, if we're able to move forward in reference to both the acquisition and the funding of the property and transferring the property. I will say quickly that in the process of the county acquiring property under the ROFA program, we acquire it and immediately transfer it to the nonprofit organization. So it's just a matter of seconds of our ownership in reference to the settlement table and actually transferring the documents from our ownership to the nonprofit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Chapman.
Thank you. Good evening. It is really both a personal and a professional honor to be here. I am a Takoma Park Elementary School and Takoma Park Middle School parent. The middle school child who was kicked out of the building years ago and was on Old Georgetown Road, a math magnet, is now a child and adolescent psychiatrist at Children's National Medical Center. She just came back from Columbia, New York to take that appointment, and she's a Blair girl. So I'm a proud parent and your neighbor. I have with me two important people. Ralph Belk, who's behind me. Ralph, could you wave, please? Is my Deputy Executive Director for the National Center for Children and Families. And on the right hand is Janice, who actually grew up in Takoma Park. So she knew how to go the back way to get here through the traffic. And she still has much family in this community. She is our Family Services Administrator and manages all of our housing programs, family housing programs. The three of us would be really responsible for making sure that the city of Takoma Park is excited about our entry into your immediate community. What I want to do is just thank the mayor and all the council members and the city managers for the opportunity to share very quickly almost 105-year-old history of this organization. We were one of the first orphanages in this region. We were the former Baptist Home for Children, then Baptist Home for Children and Family, and now the National Center for Children and Families. We have grown since '91 under my leadership. I've been there a while. I stepped down after 10 years at Children's Hospital as the Associate Director of Child Protection. I'm adjunct professor at Howard School of Social for 30 years, teaching child and family welfare. This is my passion. I have some of the best professionals working for me and with me, approximately over 200. And over the course, and you can look at our website, we've created approximately 20 to 24 programs. We've done some great work with a mostly millennial team. I like them. My children are millennials, so I'm trained well. And they bring passion to the mission. And I think I want you to hear that, because this building on Flower Avenue is part of what we do. And you'll find a summary of some of the projects we've done, we've worked with, and we're very happy to work with DHCA and the Department of Health and Human Services in the county to create an opportunity for 8 families to really have affordable, safe housing that can translate into their children being raised in this wonderful city, can be raised so they can have economic, social, emotional, spiritual opportunities that they deserve. That's our mission. If you look on the website again, our mission is to help the community. We don't fix or rescue people. Help the community take care of its own vulnerable members. Our attitude is that any of us could be some of our colleagues, our families, our children. We could be born into situations that are destitute or experience life assaults that are just overwhelming. And so our goal is to provide services that will support families, and housing is basic to raising and to family well-being. So I think that I just want to highlight a couple things that we've done that's kind of impressive, but we've done a lot that's impressive because our clients tell us that they have made life better for themselves by being in a relationship with us. My products are folk who create those relationships and inspire our folk to take risks and to see opportunities. So what we're looking for are some of the things we've done already. We are opening October 1, the first homeless shelter in Ward 4. We are the managers, and we will be opening that based on the Green Tree Shelter model that we've had since '83. It's an award-winning NIDA, Children's Defense Fund, commended model, and we've had it since the '80s. And Montgomery County has been the primary contractor. Freddie Mac funded it for a long time. But the city is using our basic footprint, and we have been assigned, and I think this is a lot of pressure, assigned to open up the first one in the Mayor's Own Dear Ward. And so we will be doing that. We have also been the first to do an elementary school turnaround, the J.C. Null Community School, under the community school model, which now is standardized in the district. We have Child Trends did the research, so we are evidence-based And third party, we believe in evidence. We believe in results and not just in giving lip service. We partnered with this gentleman, which was our first experience in really gutting out small apartment buildings. We like quality, not big. We like intimacy. We like community within communities, and that's how we do our work. So we do have and own 2 small apartment buildings in downtown Bethesda for 8 families who are paying 30 to 50% of their income in a $2,500 a month district. They're averaging $900 to $1,000 in rent, and they can walk to the metro, and their kids can go to Bethesda, Chevy Chase. So we excited about things like that. We serve folks who have run from domestic violence, and they've gotten rid of the perpetrator, but now they're homeless, have no money, and have no resources. We put a lot of emphasis into providing those supports for them, so that in this proposal, we would like to have 4 of the units for affordable housing. That would be folk who qualify as 30, 50% of the median area income would qualify to be tenants. The other 4 would be families that need 24 months to create the opportunity to have their own permanent housing. And that typically requires more income, some training, some literacy, and some structure. So we would provide them with the case management supports, referrals to the resources in this very affluent community. But as you know, an affluent community doesn't mean that there's access for everyone if they do not have a navigation system and know how to use those resources, how to advocate for their child's IEP in school, how to get their needs met, how to be treated fairly and not be discriminated against, how to even go for an interview, and mostly how to develop some more workforce skills so that they can compete and bring back the economic underpinning of their family structure. So that's what we do. I don't know, Ralph could probably talk about all the things that we can brag about. We are very proud as an organization to have been around so long. Arnie Sorensen from Married is, we have a Married seat on our board, and at the 100th year celebration, he said, you know, not too many nonprofits get to be this old. And I would say to you, I've been here probably 1/4 of the time it's been around, which means I'm old. Ralph would be my succession plan. So we see ourselves as creating some continuity in this community and not being kind of in and out, but part of being part of the community. We run the largest family homeless shelter in Montgomery County is in Bethesda, and my neighbors have our cell phones and we get along. Our kids shovel their snow and cut their grass. And if there's a problem, I'll get the text that says there's 4 of them on my lawn smoking cigarettes. Here they are. So I can go ring, ring, ring to the staff. Did you get those 4 boys off there? And make sure they pick up the cigarette butts. So I believe that we should be really neighborly because we need each other. And we've developed that relationship in Bethesda. We have the Bradley Hills Presbyterian and the Jewish congregation are absolute partners, and they're looking for a new assignment for us. And they've helped us with capital campaign ventures. We like building. We like aesthetics. We believe beauty heals. We believe that folks should live in well-appointed housing and not feel like second-class citizens and have squalor or inadequacy frame their own internal sense of self. So we promote hope and opportunity. This is a beautiful city, and it would be a great place. The diversity is wonderful, and we think that we could give 8 families at any given time a wonderful opportunity to thrive. So I think I'll be open to any other questions. We can talk about many things we've done and do here. We did get the Paul Sarbanes Award for Community Services this past year, and we were very, very humbled by that. We weren't expecting that, but we were humbled by that because we do keep our eye on our passionate effort to be meaningful. Remember, we have a primarily millennial staff, and that's what I like about these younger professionals. Some Gen Xers, I think Ralph and Janice are Gen Xers. But what I like about them is that they find sheer pleasure in helping others help themselves. So I will end and not go on because you see I can, because it is late, and I did enjoy the light lesson.
I'll never look at a street light the same way again.
Great. Well, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Chapman, for telling us more about the services you provide. And I love the phrase, as you said, beauty heals. So thank you. And thank you for all the work all of you do and for coming here tonight. My colleagues have some questions for you or comments. Councilmember Siemens, would you like to start?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for being here tonight. I've been looking forward to learning from you when the Lee Avenue buildings are going to be open and full. I guess that's a topic of a later discussion tonight, but look forward to hearing when you're actually going to start moving some families in on Lee Avenue.
Well, that's a different nonprofit, so I'm going to defer.
Sure. I do believe the Coalition of Homes is here tonight and will be addressing some things about the property, but I can say that the property is pretty much complete, about 95% technically. We'll actually be doing a inspection tomorrow to go over some of the punch list item things, and that organization is working now on the process of looking at the persons that will be occupying and applying to lease the units there at 126 and 128 Lee Avenue.
Well, great. Back to the subject at hand. I imagine a lot of people call you Mom.
I've got some little ones that call me Grammy. I'm mostly known as Dr. C, or Doc.
No, it sounds like a great program. I know that I've become aware, through the recent years that we have homeless people who have kind of adopted Takoma Park and live here, and we've been fortunate to be able to find some housing for them. But I just wondered how you identify the need, the families in need, and how you select them.
Okay, so we've been around for a long time, and since the 80s we've been serving homeless families. So we partner very closely with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they make referrals. We also get referrals from, you'd be surprised, from the public school system, because they're a homeless child in their classroom, and now the homeless child comes with a homeless family. We also identify families for our affordable housing program through a wide network of families that we serve, and they are looking now for permanent housing. They've got income, but they can't afford the rent in the county.
Right.
So we often do that. Since the 80s, we've probably served at least 10,000 families in homeless condition. And so we have a wide network. We have several rapid rehousing models. We have an under 25 program for 20 young parents. So we're really in the homeless world of families, and the referrals generally come through the county. How do we select them? They're certified by the county as, for the subsidized part of this building, they're certified by the county as homeless. For the affordable housing units, they would apply. We would have a property management model. They would apply, and based on their income, if there's a vacancy and they qualify by the median area income, they would be given the apartment. So it would be first come, first served, so to speak. So as soon as it's known that there's a vacancy,
right,
generally, once the building is renovated, we will have no problem finding people who are that below from actually even within this community.
I guess my dream is that if you're able to move ahead with this and open that house, that you'll be able to accept referrals from the city of Takoma Park.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because as I say, unfortunately, there are families here in Takoma Park that
Absolutely.
occasionally get into that position.
For the subsidized part of the building, we would be looking at Health and Human Services to help us certify them,
Certainly.
because they would be technically homeless. For the families who are struggling, they may be doubled up, tripled up in the apartment, and they're not technically viewed as homeless, but they can't afford the rent in this neighborhood, in this city, in this county. Then we would be looking for referrals, because that would be our market, open market, but affordable rentals.
I look forward to talking with you and getting some of your advice on how we can work more closely with Health and Human Services in the county.
Oh, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Appreciate that.
Oh, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Simmons.
Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Kager, for being here this evening. It's good to see that the county is supporting projects like this. This is my ward. This is a care about for me. And Dr. Chapman, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm also a Howard alum.
I was going to say HU,
That's
you know.
right. That's right. You know, this is part of the mission and the history of
Yes.
Howard University.
Yeah.
It's good to see that you're living it. And
I'm a Delta too.
oh, are you?
Yes.
My wife's an AKA.
Okay.
So I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Mhm.
I want you to know that I'm here to support you in any way possible. I would like to see more initiatives like this in the city. It's extremely important. Homelessness has just run off the rails in the DMV. I don't think we as government are paying enough attention to it. I think we just, walk the other way. It's not glamorous like, development or other projects that we spend time on, but this is our neighbors, this is our friends. These are the people that we go to church with that need some extra help, that need this type of support. So thank you for reaching out to Takoma Park, making this your home, and anything that Takoma Park Council can do, please let me know. And I want to be at the ribbon cutting and meet the families that are placed in the facility. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, if you don't mind, because you've triggered, professorial child and family welfare. And what you trigger is how so many people do not understand the extreme poverty and the impact on little kids under 5. The housing instability of families that are raising young children, the developmental impact is devastating. And so as we look to expand the middle school, how many of the children will be ready for the middle school because they're already behind from elementary school, because they've got developmental impacts of being bounced around, and it affects the way they think, how they feel, their sense of confidence, and it's devastating. And so this is really, really important. I'm so glad you understand that, and I look forward to working with you.
It's a critical issue for our community.
Because we'll pay, because we can't help those children. Right.
One way or another, we will pay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilwoman DeBala?
Yeah, the need is great, for sure, and if it's local community, and this is a great proposal. I think a couple of specific, and I've looked at your annual reports, and it's impressive. The ranger programs, the number of facilities that you manage, and the list of volunteers.
Yeah,
It goes on for a couple, 3 pages. It's just pretty cool.
2,500.
There you go. So 3 related quick questions. I think you referred to Walk to Metro, which, so I'm confirming that's the case, but then also the second and third questions, what kind of services, if any, do you and others provide to the folks who will be living there to help them get on their feet? And what, if any, kind of property management, how have you done that? A 10-unit building is not huge, so you might not have somebody living there, so how does that, how do you see that going?
So we'll start with first, the Walk to Metro was where our other apartments are, affordable housing units are in downtown Bethesda.
Oh, okay, well, Flower.
However, this address, the younger families could get to the metro, because my kids walk to the Silver Spring Metro, and I can walk from my house to here, so. So the second question spoke to what kinds of supports we would give them. For the 4 families that are in the affordable units, they're basically getting from us well-maintained units at prices they can afford. And they would not be getting other kinds of services from us. They would be really, again, Mr. Siemens will probably fill all 4 of those units up immediately, right? For the families that are in the subsidized 4 units, they would be families who've established that they're homeless. And they would get case management supports so that they would learn how to get their budget, what kind of income they need to create, and they would have up to 24 months to really come up with a plan where they can move into their own apartment. Theoretically, if there's a vacancy in this unit, they could move into the unit or have their unit convert to being an affordable housing unit, theoretically. But we really do want them to be able to leave the house in 24 months and have their own lease in their own name that they can afford. Now, that will continue to be a challenge in this county, and some of our families do choose to leave the county because, or to go up county, Frederick, or to go out of Baltimore County. And so we would help them figure out what kinds of choices they need to make to, or reunite with a family member in another state so they can do, or to live in a co-op situation where 2 roommates share with 1 child each, share. I came out of Boston and we did co-op living in the college level, graduate students, where you share a house and you share childcare so that everyone can get their little degrees. So that model is applicable. So we would help them figure out what is their plan in 24 months to be able to be on their own and be self-sufficient and have, and that means connecting them to workforce development programs, connecting them to subsidies that a lot of people don't necessarily take, like food stamps, et cetera, where they can figure out how to get the education that they need and the training so that when they're through, thank you, so that when they're through, they can get higher wages other than the $11 or the $8.25 an hour. You really can't raise children at that rate. So we would be really becoming their coach and their partner, and we would know them well. But we also, I'll be really candid here, I describe this as a nurturing and structuring. In the research, family structure is absolutely almost more powerful than affection. If the family is not structured and organized, you can't deliver the good enough for your child to grow and thrive and achieve, right? So we would be helping them, holding them accountable to structure. You can't have the child bouncing around at 11 o'clock at night. They're only 4 years old. You put them to bed. So there are things that we talk about in terms of family structure, but not in a judgmental or shaming way, but in a supportive way, so the volunteers could come and do some mentoring. We may be taking them out to expose them to workplace opportunities, interning. Those are kind of things we'll do, but it'll be tailored to each family. So 4 will be in that category. The other 4 are going to be happy to pay their lower rent and live in a beautiful neighborhood in a lovely home. So I look at that mix in that building.
Property management and maintenance?
Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second.
How do you normally
We have a
handle that?
director of administrative services,
Okay.
and we have facility staff. And so we'll be looking at, because we now have a property manager with our other 2, but we rarely have to use them for running up. So we are looking at having the case managers who will come to the house often with those 4 families. They will report any kind of issue that they see. The families also will report any kind of concern they have, and our facilities team would address it. And if they couldn't address it, we would contract for someone to address it. So we would be landlords, and we'd have to sustain the property.
Thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Talisha, Searcy.
No problem.
And by the way, excuse me one second, the house is between two houses that externally are well maintained. So we'll have pressure, like I have off Dale Drive. I'm leading the pack sometimes, and then they catch up, and then I gotta follow them. We have peer pressure to keep the flowers and the landscaping. So we would feel the same pressure to maintain between two lovely, beautifully colored Takoma Park City model.
And it is vacant now.
We would want to maintain our contribution to the beauty of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
And that peer pressure is real. It helps to motivate me to make sure the grass gets cut.
Oh, yes.
And your neighbors out there cutting the grass, you get out there too. So I just want to say thank you all so much. There are aspects of what you've mentioned that really hit the nail on the head for me. The priority that the city has around affordability and affordable housing is an important one, but for me to go that next step of ensuring the quality of the housing that's there. You know, my story is one where growing up with a single mom, and we moved around a lot, and quality is important to build the confidence that a family in need would need in order to make progress out of poverty. Right?
Exactly.
So I appreciate that, and the idea of building self-sufficiency, I believe, is just such an important point. So don't want to belabor it. It's 10 o'clock. I'm always mindful of the clock. But I do appreciate you all coming out tonight, and I look forward to seeing what you're able to do on this property and continuing a partnership with the city. We're just really looking forward to having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I don't see any other lights on, so we want to just thank you again for coming, and we're looking forward to having you in the city. So.
I'm going to just leave my cards and
perfect,
pass them around. So I'm a hands-on executive.
Yep.
So are my two colleagues. So if you have a question, call me.
We will. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll see you, Mr. Smith.
Great. And so we now have our next item, which is a request for payment in lieu of property taxes for 126 and 128 Lee Avenue. Coalition Homes is here.
Yes. And as they're coming up to the table, come on, guys. As Councilmember Siemens and Mr. Vincent with the county indicated or discussed, these two properties have been before the City Council before when the county acquired the property under their right of first refusal and then turned it over to Coalition Homes, which has been working to renovate the properties over the last 24 months, 18 months?
18.
Seems like a very long time. They are here this evening to request a payment in lieu of taxes to offset the operating costs associated with the property. And as detailed in the cover memo, it's one of the few resources the city has to provide financial support of affordable housing efforts. Joining us this evening is Mr. Troy Schwanda, did I get it right? Director, new director of Coalition Homes, and Mr. Jacob Shans, who's the facilities administrator.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and the members of the City Council. Thank you, Ms. Daines, for the introduction and helping us navigate the pilot process. As she said, my name is Troy Swanda. I'm the new director of Coalition Homes, Inc., an affiliate of the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless. And by new, I mean that today is my 12th day on the job. Spent nearly the last 20 years working for So Others Might Eat, addressing homelessness in the district, and specifically the last 11 years developing supportive service housing for single adults, families, and seniors. I am happy to now be doing the same in Montgomery County, which has been my home for 13 years, and in particular to be working for the Coalition Homes and MCCH, which last year provided permanent supportive housing to over 500 households who had previously experienced homelessness. Thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding the pilot exemption for our affordable units at 126 and 128 Lee Avenue, which was, as mentioned earlier, we're doing the punch list walk tomorrow and very close to opening for families. Coalition Homes and Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless have a shared mission to provide solutions in Montgomery County to ensure that homelessness is a rare, brief, and non-recurring experience. Our vision is to build a community in which everyone has a safe, stable, and affordable place to call home. The role of Coalition Homes is to expand the supply of affordable housing in the county, as we are doing on Lee Avenue. The development and operation of affordable housing is difficult to achieve financially and would not be possible without programs like Pilot to help make projects fiscally feasible. This exemption will help us keep rents affordable for those most in need and is particularly important for projects like Lee Avenue, which is intentionally small to blend into the community and therefore doesn't have economies of scale. We also include the utilities in the rent amount so our residents are better able to budget without having to deal with volatile utility costs. And any small amount of remaining operating income is added to our replacement reserve fund for the property to help maintain it as quality, affordable housing for years to come. Thank you again for considering this project for the pilot exemption and for the opportunity to speak on its behalf. We are happy to answer any questions now or during the work session if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. And we're excited to hear that you're going to be going through the punch list and the construction's almost done. I know we've had a couple of hiccups with some residents, and I'm hoping now that it's coming to a closure, those are all behind us. I don't know if there's any other updates or anything on those issues, but I'm hoping things have gotten resolved.
Yeah, I think you're speaking in regards to the parking situation with the adjacent property. I think that is resolved, yeah. Jake worked hard on that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there were some initial issues when construction started up with our general contractor. We did post the building and we didn't have too many issues after that. My sense is that building 116 had some other issues in the neighborhood, and we kind of compounded that. But we've responded. I've had phone calls and met with people on site there every opportunity that I've been asked to do so.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
And we'll continue to do. I've made sure to let people know that we're not going anywhere. We're, professional property management. They can always reach out to us.
Great. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Appreciate the work that you guys are going to do here in the city. Just a couple questions. Will you offer any type of services on the property for the residents other than just the housing? Is there any type of wraparound services for residents?
Yeah, for all the affordable units will have case management service provided by MCCH.
Okay, good. You mentioned that there was any excess revenue that you guys get, that you put it into the reserve. How then do you guys pay your staff?
What the management fee would be paid before that excess.
Okay, so there is a management fee. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And my last question is there any type of community room that will be in either one of the properties so that, the residents can throw parties or,
Neither of these two they're pretty small footprint buildings, and they're each 6 units, and so there's not a community space available at this particular site.
All right. Thank you for being here. Love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both for being here. Sorry I put my question out before you got to the table, but the neighborhood is, those buildings are in my ward, and the neighborhood's been pretty excited about seeing those buildings not only being renovated, but being populated too. It's been a long time, very long time, since they've been healthy, vibrant part of the community. So we thank you for the work you put in. I've been happy to see the workers obviously getting to a point where they're just about done. You can tell it from after the day's over. You see them congregating out in the parking lot, and They don't look like they have a whole lot left to do. Do you have a date yet of when you're planning to actually open and start moving people in?
I think after tomorrow's walkthrough with the architect and the general contractor, I think we'll have a pretty clear sense from that walkthrough. But it's imminent, but we can get you a date certain
Right, that
soon.
would be great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And then you mentioned that you do have the case management services, but case management kind of helps to identify what the needs are. Is there anybody providing the resources to meet those needs?
Yeah, I think if I understand what I guess what we mean by wraparound support services or case management is, either providing that through MCCH's staff or a referral to an appropriate, employment training program or something, for instance, that would benefit somebody. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's what I mean, is that it's one thing to sit there and say, oh, this is what you need, but, do they make the referrals necessary to make that happen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kovar.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just one question. It looks like 3 of the units will not be income restricted, market rate. Do you have an estimate of what they would rent for?
The 2-bedroom, I think, was $1,500.
Yeah, $14.95.
$14.95 for the 2-bedroom, and
The 1-bedroom, I don't.
Well, less than that. presumably.
yeah, 13,
Thank you.
25 or so.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Councilwoman DeBala.
Yeah, same. This is really interesting, and thank you for doing this. I had 4 questions. I'll cut it down to 2. The one is for you. So same question as the other group. How will you identify tenants for the?
It's a very similar answer.
Less than AMI. Similar process. Okay. And then the other question was just to let Susie know that I had asked earlier, if we could get tomorrow a list of or comparatives of other pilot subsidies in the city, and that's just a separate discussion.
Yes,
but we don't have to get
all
into
that
it now.
information.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. I actually think it might be in our strategic, okay.
And Sarah actually printed out a bunch of stuff, so
Okay.
we can pass it even out.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't see any other lights on, so I'm very excited this is moving along. I remember when I guess your predecessor first came to us to talk about this project, and it's great to see it almost done. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And Mayor, if I just might,
Uh-huh.
this would need to come back to the council for action because
Right.
they're asking for a pilot. We're looking at somewhere in early October or something like that.
Okay, and
So
we
we'll
actually have it
probably-
on our work session later
Yeah.
tonight, or soon
Right, but I
to talk
just
about
want
it,
to
yeah.
give a sense of that.
Mhm. Okay, great. We'll now move on to our voting section. We have a consent agenda that includes a single reading ordinance authorizing the purchase of information systems items, single reading ordinance awarding a contract for landscape field maintenance, and a single reading ordinance approving a partnership contract for community play activities. Any public comments on the consent agenda? The next item on our voting session tonight is a single reading ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for design and engineering services for the new Ave Bikeways project. Any public comments on that? All right, seeing none, we will go to our voting session. The first item is our consent agenda. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Councilmember Siemens moved. Do I have a second? Councilmember Kovar second. Since there are single reading ordinances, we need a roll call.
Councilmember Costick. Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Searcy. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. Next voting item is the single reading ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for design and engineering services for the new Ave Bikeways project. We pulled this from the consent agenda because we're excited about it. And I know it's really late, but
No, that's great.
we really wanted to spend at least a few minutes talking about it. And Jamie, I don't know if you want to give us some of the highlights of this
Sure.
project.
Oh, yeah, if you wouldn't mind. So as is outlined in your memo, briefly, the city received a grant from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. It was a Transportation Land Use Connections grant to work on 30% design for a separated bike lane on New Hampshire Avenue on the existing service lane on the southbound side. And it would be a two-directional bike lane separated from traffic. And so we had design work done by RK&K, an engineering firm. I believe they presented to council in May 2017, presented the 30% designs, and we received a second grant in November 2017 to move forward with semi-final designs on that same bikeway through a Maryland Bikeways grant.
Terrific. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work on this. Councilwoman Searcy?
Yay. I'm so excited. Not only am I excited for the funding and the opportunity, but or to get the project moving, but also this opens the door of opportunity to connect this bikeway project to, fingers crossed they stay, purple line bike lanes as well, which means you could actually get from New Hampshire, from East-West Highway, all the way to University Boulevard eventually, and all the way up to a Purple Line station on a bike, which is amazing. And so I just want to thank the city staff that have been working hard on moving this forward, and I appreciate all of the efforts, and we're excited to see this move forward.
Great. Councilwoman DeBala?
Yeah, this is great. I've been interested in biking on New Hampshire without risking my life for some time. But I did have one technical question that somebody can answer, again, maybe not tonight. The 30% design rollout and the next, the 60%, just going all the way up to the new Purple Line station? No, the new bus station, and going all the way down to tying into Ethan Allen, and they don't seem to be the same. And is there a change because of the Purple Line plans, or for some other reason?
It's just what we received funding for. So the 30% design work from the previous grant did 30% design all the way up to the transit center. We applied for funding for the 60% design for the entire bikeway, but we received funding just up to Holden Lane to go to 60%, but we'll be pursuing further funding to get up to semi-final design.
So we don't intend to stop at Holden?
No, we don't
Okay.
intend to stop, but this
intend to find
specific
some other
grant
funding to
just
connect.
funds
Okay,
this
thank you.
particular portion,
That's
yes.
good. Thanks.
And I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, until we're able to get enough funding to go from Holton to University, New Hampshire Gardens has some space for bikes, so people bike through the neighborhood. So in essence, you could take Holton and cut over. So that would be like a temporary fix until we get enough money to go straight through.
Councilwoman Costick?
Thank you. I remember about a year ago, or maybe last May, the Safe Roadways Committee gave some feedback on the plan. So I would just say if there's an opportunity to look back at some of that and discuss that during the plans, I think that would be helpful. I know there was a lot of discussion about the bridge and kind of the connection right by Sligo Creek. So that seemed to be kind of the primary area that needed some working around.
Yeah.
So as we're moving forward, it would be great if we could focus on those things.
Yes, definitely. And within the scope of work that RK&K provided us, it involves 2 meetings specifically with Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning to address that area specifically.
Terrific. Awesome. And thank you, Ms. Morris, for staying so late to do this one.
No, I'm
we
glad
appreciate
people
it.
are
We're very
excited.
excited about this. All right. Will someone like to move this one? Move it. Councilwoman Searcy moves it. Do I have a second? Councilwoman DeBala. This is a single reading ordinance. Would the clerk like to call the roll?
Councilmember Kovar.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBala.
Aye.
Councilmember Costick. Aye. Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Searcy. Aye. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. Great. Now we'll have public comments on other topics. Are there any other public comments this evening? Okay, come up to the And again, I don't know, you all weren't here when we started the meeting. This was a little unusual that we had so many reports at the beginning, but we have a number of voting items that we need to do next week and the following week. So that's why public comments are at 10:30 tonight.
No worries, it's great. They were all really exciting to hear about. My name is Elizabeth Thompson, and I speak in support of council action to mitigate climate change by preserving Dorothy's Woods. First, thank you so much to the mayor and current city council members, staff, and past city council members for preserving the woods in the past. In the brief time since we've learned that the woods were up for a second and final auction, citizens have rallied to ask questions, look up facts on the very helpful city website, write letters, and collect donations. We emphasized writing letters, hoping that that would give people the opportunity to speak in their own voice at a time when throughout the city people seem to feel that need really intensely. In terms of the donations, we've had more than 35 donors just in the past few days, and the city is of course welcome to use those funds should they choose to protect the woods. In the midst of all of the climate change and difficulty and many needs within the city, all of which are really exciting and important, why does this one wooded parcel matter? People everywhere recognize increasingly that climate change is an issue that could threaten humanity's existence on Earth. The extremes and fluctuations are things that I think our children worry about, our grandparents worry about. They are ever present. We see them in heat indexes that prevent sports issues and all that sort of thing. While this is one issue and one small 2.6 acre parcel, it is unique because this little parcel is the largest singly owned parcel in Takoma Park that we can protect as a wooded parcel. At a small scale, a 50-year-old 1 acre oak forest sequesters 30,000 pounds of carbon dioxide per acre and emits 22,000 pounds of oxygen. At an urban scale, DC's urban forests store 649,000 tons of carbon and emit, which is equivalent to 2,381 tons of carbon dioxide per year, which is equivalent to removing 506,000 vehicles from the road, which if you lined them up would be from Boston to Miami. So these little things can add up to something that makes a difference and matters. Okay, all right. 30 seconds. Okay, thank you. I was really thrilled when the city chose to protect the woods the first time and take ownership. This is, of course, just the last step if we're able to push this over and retain this little parcel. Our hope is that we'll be taking a stand and making a vote for something that we know Takoma Park has believed in for a long time, in preserving that natural environment and preserving our ability to protect a stable climate for our future. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience with having us speak at this time of night. I'm Margot Bass. I've lived in Takoma Park for 17 years. I'm so appreciative of the huge successes of the mayor and the city council in conserving Dorothy's Woods to date. It was clear from the IRS auction in 2015 that any purchaser faced a complex and risky path to full ownership. The city has nearly reached the finish line, overcoming major obstacles with focused leadership by the mayor and the council, accompanied by precision execution by city staff and legal counsel, and I really mean it. The milestones on this remarkable path include the mayor and council reaching consensus to enter the IRS auction within a highly pressured timeline, winning the IRS auction, separating the parcel from the Washington McLaughlin Christian School's other 2 parcels, paying county debts, recouping city debts, putting a strict conservation covenant on the land, and having HUD release its lien from Dorothy's Woods. All these have been achieved with a small net investment to the city in the amount of some $70,000, according to the city website, excluding city staff time and legal time. Now there's this unexpected foreclosure on Dorothy's Woods by Fairview. We call on you to summon the leadership, resources, and strategy to reach the finish line to protect the woods. We ask you to please purchase the lien from Fairview prior to the September foreclosure auction. Buying the lien seems like the best possible win for the city residents for these overarching reasons. First, it protects public health and provides many ecosystem services that the city or residents would otherwise be paying for. Buying the lien permanently protects a forest that represents a significant 3% of the city forest cover. This forest currently controls stormwater runoff from many surrounding streets and homes, cleans the city air, and controls extensive air pollution from New Hampshire Avenue, benefiting young and elderly residents alike. Just as an example, a mature forest tree is estimated to filter the toxins out of an equivalent of 502 Olympic-sized swimming pools each year. Elizabeth already spoke to the carbon benefits. We don't know the services value of Takoma's trees, but DC's are worth about $4.28 billion. Second, buying the lien uses taxpayer money frugally because you would have the potential of the lien being paid back if Washington McLaughlin comes out of bankruptcy. And third, it gives you control over the 2 parcels of the Washington McLaughlin School, which could provide elderly housing or other types of benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Sally Tabor. I live on Auburn Avenue, and I've actually lived in the city, I think, over 30 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about the volunteer effort that has gone into Dorothy's Woods since the city bought it in 2015. We have had over 16 events. Most of them have been work days in which for 2 to 3 hours people come, and we have worked on pulling invasives, pulling down vines from the trees, picking up trash, and things like that. 3 of those were Martin Luther King Days, where that was one of the work projects. One was a Montgomery County Service Week project, for which we even applied and got a $200 mini grant, which bought some much needed tools. And over all those projects, we figure that we have over 400 hours, which is a conservative estimate of hours worked by people on those projects. That was like 150 different folks over that time period. And in the last year, we've had 2, I think a Cub Scout troop and a Boy Scout troop have both done work projects on the site. It's a lot of volunteer work that has gone into this, and so I hope that the city will see their way clear to finding some money to do this last thing that needs to be done so that you actually own the site fair and square. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you. Any other public comments this evening?
Hi, this is Catherine Tunis, Larch Avenue, and I apologize. I got comfortable over there, so I don't have any shoes on. Don't look.
That's okay.
But I've been talking to council about this property since it first became an IRS auction issue in 2014. This is the largest undeveloped property in the city of Takoma Park that is not yet secured, and we're working on it. And I wanted to thank the prior council members who supported us in going out there and going to that very dramatic IRS auction, and securing the property, and everything that has been done by staff and the city attorney since then to protect the property, to clarify, to clear away the other liens. I was asked to talk about the trees. By the way, I also want to tell you I'm glad that you're looking at the LED lights. We recommended that 19 years ago in the first climate change action plan that we did in the city of Takoma Park. Another thing that we did 19 years ago when I was chair of the Committee on the Environment was to do a climate study, a microclimate study, where we had 2 electronic weather stations that were identical. One was in my neighbor's treed yard, and the other one was on the police trailer that used to be up in Langley Park. One of the things that we found is on a typical summer day, it was 12 to 14 degrees cooler in my neighbor's yard than in Langley Park. And they've got little trees growing in that parking lot, so it's not exactly the worst parking lot in the world. It was also 2 to 4 degrees cooler at night. And so what was happening is those trees are really mitigating the climate. It's not just carbon sequestration, what everybody talks about. That is true. And as well as the wildlife and stormwater benefits and everything else that comes from protecting a habitat like this. But the trees suck up gallons, millions of gallons of water, and they evaporate that. And that the physical act of evaporating those gallons of water sucks billions of calories of heat out of the air and cools the climate in the summertime, exactly when we need this. This is a primarily deciduous forest, mature oaks and beeches and yellow poplars, and this is the services that they're providing to the city, as well as the educational efforts for our future children and residents. So please help us, work with us. We'll do as much as we can to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? Just in time.
The doors were locked at 9:30.
Yeah.
I've only been here for 5 minutes. Hello, Sachivan Ikle Khalsa, 6719 Conway Avenue, Ward 2. I'm here to talk about the amount of partnership we've gotten from the council and the citizens on this Dorothy's Woods project 2 times in a row. They've astounded me with the neighbors with their generosity and also the council with their time in attending to see how we can work on this together. And we have raised significant funds, both the previous auction and this auction, and we hope that we'll be able to combine those together. We've raised funds large and small, from kids and adults from across the city, from right next to the woods to 10 blocks away to all the way across the woods, and I think probably across the town and even outside of the town for some folks who maybe have some watershed concerns and Sligo Creek priorities. So I want you to know that the support is concentrated around the woods, but it has wide-reaching concerns for folks, and I hope that we can do this kind of project where we have citizens supplement city funds to help make all sorts of projects better than they could have been otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? All right, I believe we have 2 public comments that were recorded prior, so yes. This is a new thing. Yeah. See, I saved the good stuff for 10:36 at night. Keep you all awake. All right.
3 times as long.
Yeah. No, 3 minutes still. Okay.
I'm Mary Jane Mitchell, a senior disabled citizen of Takoma Park, Ward 2. I do not have the means to attend council meetings in person. I'm concerned about the gentrification underlined 100-point type gentrification of Takoma Park. Friends have had to move. My disabled son and I might be forced to move. I would like to ask our state, county, and city to take immediate steps to stop and decrease property taxation. Developers are making much money in our neighborhoods. They're building pop-ups, making houses much bigger. Wealthier people are moving in. These wealthier people are demanding more and more services, which in turn increase our taxes. When will it stop? Before only wealthy people live here? It's getting that way. And I notice almost all the people moving in are wealthier white people, and the black people in my neighborhood are moving out. And I really think it's a racial issue also. Takoma Park prides itself on a diversity, but I notice the darker skinned people are mostly living in apartments where the homeowners are becoming more and more white. Thank you for listening.
My name is Mark Sherman on Hancock Avenue, and I moved to Takoma Park in 2000. But I've also spent part of that time living just across the border. In 2003, for example, I moved to an apartment on Eastern Avenue in the District of Columbia, near the Metro. It was right where Holly Avenue runs into Eastern, and on many nights, I and the woman to whom I used to be married would walk down Holly to take in the evening air. We enjoyed taking those walks at all times of year, but especially in summer, when, if we peered into the darkness near Dogwood, where the buried stream comes through from Piney Branch, we could see dozens of flickering lights coursing upwards through the trees. They were fireflies, and we were transfixed, speechless. Today, that darkness is threatened by a plan to put LED lights on every block, lights that are so bright you could put a lawn chair in the middle of the street and read the paper at midnight. Yes, the council is aware of the problem, and a couple years ago it set some parameters for the color of those lights. Specifically, it said they should be rated at no more than 3000 K, which is a way of describing how much blue light they contain. Since then, however, technology has advanced. It is now possible to light a city with lights rated as 2700 K, as the city of Phoenix did after the Phoenix City Council asked residents for their opinions. That's important because it makes the lights appear warmer in character, more inviting, more friendly. But it's not just the color that matters. And so what Phoenix also did is bring the luminance down by 60% compared to the lights they replaced, according to Pete Strasser, technical director of the International Dark Sky Association. And you can do that with LEDs, Pete explained to me, because LEDs appear brighter naturally. Later this evening, you will hear from the Public Works Director and from people at PEPCO. But you won't hear from Pete. You won't hear from anyone who can challenge what you're being told. And so I urge you to take some of the money you're saving on cost and use that to bring in someone from the International Dark Sky Association. Because the truth is, this is rocket science, no pun intended, and it's easy to get it wrong. In fact, that's why the Dark Sky Association certifies lights, and if they're not certified, it doesn't matter if the manufacturer calls them dark sky compliant. That's just marketing terminology. Don't rush. In fact, pause on any further installations. Bring in someone who could educate all of us on how this really works. And don't forget the fireflies. Thanks so much.
Those are all the public comments for this evening. We will now turn to council comments. Any council comments tonight? Councilwoman DeBala.
Yeah, quick on the draw for a change, huh? So very quickly, I'll just buzz through this. So there will be a police meeting. The one that we were going to have in August, we're going to have in September. This is breaking news here. Tuesday, September 18th, 7 o'clock in the Forest Park neighborhood, 513 Elm, for anybody in any ward who's interested in hearing about how you can keep your home and your neighborhood a little safer by working together. Captain Collington will come out and we'll have a little bit on a little crime stat thing, and then we'll talk about ways to do this together. So that's Tuesday, September 18th, 7 o'clock. Gateway night paving, are you going to talk about this?
No, I didn't include that. Please do.
Oh, I thought I could take it off my list. Okay, so for the Gateway project.
There's a number of items I didn't get to, so
Yeah,
I
know the
appreciate
feeling.
that you
So
can pick that up.
Okay, quite seriously, you're going to hear about one end of town. The other end of town is the gateway between New Hampshire and Ethan Allen. And for 8 nights starting, I think tonight, there will be the final stage of the Gateway project construction, which will be closing the road and closing lanes and paving it. So it'll just be that, and we're trying to stay on top of it. And concerns that residents would have would be directed to.
Well, certainly, especially in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
they should call the
police.
Call the police.
Okay.
The 270-1100 number, 301-270-1100 at night, just to get dispatch and to say what the issue is.
Okay. I'd like to announce that there will be the first Veterans Community Clinic in Montgomery County. It's going to open September 7th. I guess that's in a few minutes. In Gaithersburg. So Gaithersburg's not great. Another day. Okay. Anyway, it's in Gaithersburg. That's a ways. It's better than nothing. I've already contacted the Village of Takoma Park to talk about whether their ride-sharing program can be extended so that folks can get up there if they need to. But that's just a great development for senior veterans. I wanted to ask about Lincoln Avenue sidewalks. There may not be an answer yet. Yes. And then last but not least, as you already heard, the big news is the impending foreclosure of Dorothy's Woods. And I wanted to thank the residents of the city once again for your volunteer hours, for your donations, for the attention to this issue. I wanted to point out to other council members that today we received letters from the Tree Commission, the Environment Committee, and the Friends of Sligo Creek about this issue. It fits in both our energy and our tree priorities, and the City Council, I hope that the City Council will continue to look for fiscally responsible ways to resolve this difficult problem.
Councilmember Smith?
I'm going to be quick. This Sunday, Washington Adventist University is having a back-to-school bash, so if you see a ton of kids outside having a good time, they are celebrating the start of the new school year. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kovar?
Thank you, Mayor. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Takoma Park Middle School that there's a lot of construction activity taking place in Ward 1. I just want to mention a few items relating to that. One, with the WSSC water main project on Philadelphia Avenue, there were some closures of the small street right around there, Chestnut, the past 2 days, and I mentioned this to the mayor and to the city manager. It happened right around the time the school buses were arriving. It might have been a little better today, but that's something maybe we could take a look at and perhaps get them not to close it off until after the school buses are there around Takoma Park Elementary, because the traffic is a serious problem. Secondly, on the Montgomery College Math Science Building, there is an ongoing charrette process underway. I'll share more detailed information with my colleagues separately, but the city does have a page on the website dedicated to the project, and there are the next two upcoming charrette meetings. One is on September 11th, that's just next week, and the one after that will be on October 2nd. Both of them take place at the college's Cultural Arts Center, which is over on Georgia Avenue. I think most people know where that is. And they go from 7 to 9:30 p.m. I will say that although there have been some concerns expressed by a number of people in the community, including myself, about the location, it was chosen by the college, and it's to replace Falcon Hall, which is the building on the campus that's closest to Takoma Avenue and Bell Ziegler Park. The three, I wouldn't say proposed designs, but tentative ideas for designs that have been put forward by the architectural firm all maintain the same or even a further back setback from the intersection. So to the extent that while the location isn't ideal, they have been paying attention to what some people in the community and even on the council have said about wanting to have those setbacks. So those are September 11th and October 2nd. And then lastly, tomorrow, the next phase of the PEPCO work, we still have our PEPCO friends in the back, will be starting up on Fenton Street, again by Montgomery College. The existing detour will not end for maybe another month or two. This will be a new detouring process starting up. It may run until February. Under this one, it'll be Monday through Friday from roughly 9 to 3:30, the whole stretch of Fenton between Takoma Avenue and the far side of the Montgomery College campus there will be closed off during that period, and you'll have to detour around. And so it will continue to be difficult to get to Silver Spring from Takoma Park, and I do want us, and it's something that we've talked about in the council priorities, to spend a little more time in the fall talking about how we work with utilities that come into the city. Thank you.
Councilwoman Costick.
Thank you. It seems like we've been here forever. It's kind of strange to be doing comments now. But I just want to go through a couple of things. I want to echo Councilmember Dabala's thanks to the people who came out tonight to speak about Dorothy's Woods, as well as the many people who contacted me, and all of the work that has been done over the years to support it and improve the property. I also want to let everyone know that this Saturday will be the Takoma Park Play Day at Takoma Park Middle School from 10 to 2 p.m. And I plan to be there with my kids, and I hope to see some other folks there. I've also heard from several residents requests to make sure that people take a look at their vegetation near the sidewalks and trim back any that's hanging over the sidewalks so that it's easier to get past. It seems like it's a good idea to just have a reminder and continue to do that periodically, because we forget when we don't walk past our own house. I know my house, my usual route is always coming from one direction, and I kind of walk past most of my sidewalks, so I don't always think to look and make sure. But I know it's important for people who are walking by, and particularly people who have disabilities or visual impairments. It can be really difficult to get past. As well as if you have garbage cans that you're putting out, to put them out at night if you can, rather than during the daytime, because I know there are a lot of narrow sidewalks throughout the city that can make it, it can be very difficult to get by if there are garbage cans in the way. And then finally, I just wanted to ask, the recorded comments is a new thing to me, and I wondered if we could just let people know how that works if they want to do that.
It's actually not new.
It's new to me.
Right. It's been on our city website, and if you look at the bottom of each of our agenda packets, each of the agenda, there's a note on an ADA notice. Tonight was the first night that we actually extended to someone who had the ability to come to the meeting but was out of town. So normally we had this service available to people because of not being able to physically come to the building, have this available. But Mr. Sherman asked us if he could, because he was out of town, record. But normally this is a service that's available for folks who are not physically able to come to the meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Our peace delegate will be happy to
I
hear
know,
that he will be able to participate
I
from
know.
home.
We had told him
We
this
told-
when
we
it,
told
he-
him,
it was
yes.
because of his request.
Yes.
That
He
is
likes to be
there.
here, but unfortunately, he's unable to find a pusher
Right.
to get him down here.
Yeah. All right, I just have Councilwoman Searcy, sorry. I didn't see a light.
We may be commenting on the same thing.
You go first. You got it.
Glad to be back. So on Friday, it's lunch with the mayor, and it will at noon. We'll be joined by one of our District 20 delegates, David Moon. So it's exciting. It's at noon at El Moreno Comida Latina and Grill. Yeah. Thank you.
It's a good place.
It is really good.
It's in Ward 6.
Yeah.
On Saturday, I will have the opportunity, barring that there is no rain, to participate in the Hillwood Manor Garden rededication and barbecue. So I'm excited about that and to get a tour of the garden. So that will be fun. And also just want to remind folks that on September the 29th from 4 to 7:30 will be the Takoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority Night Market. So it'll be the first time we've had a night market, be on Ann Street. So if you're interested in coming out, I think we'll have a brewery there to like get us a little tipsy, as well as other vendors. So please come out. Thanks.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Terrific. I think I'm spending my weekend with Councilwoman Searcy. this weekend. Very nice. A couple announcements. It is back to school this week, and I was glad to see our officers out at our local schools welcoming students back to school. And of course, just a shout out to our amazing crossing guards who are back on duty. It was great to see them. In addition, Principal Dini at our Takoma Park Middle School has been named Educator of the Year for the Maryland Hispanic Gala, which will take place on the evening of September 13th. And so you can still get tickets and go. I know the city manager has an update on the SHA issues we had a while ago, so I'll let her do that. And just to let people know, while we were on break, there's a federal farm bill that's making its way through Congress. Unfortunately, there's a piece to it that kind of got stuck in there last minute that is a preemption piece that would threaten our Safe Grow law here in Takoma Park, and would also basically curtail municipalities' ability to pass local pesticides ordinances. So since we were on recess, I sent a letter regarding that issue. I reached out to National League of Cities and MML, and other folks have gotten on this as well to express our concerns about this part of the Farm Bill. So, and that's all I got.
So speaking of the pesticides, I was happily on vacation while the deputy city manager responded to the surprise that contractors for State Highway sprayed herbicide along Ethan Allen and in general along Route 410, Maryland Route 410. Upon learning this information, city staff immediately reached out to the SHA district engineer to report the incident, express our deep concern, and find out why and how this herbicide was being used. The city had not been made aware that the spraying would be taking place, and the use of this herbicide is a violation of permissible practices within the city of Takoma Park's limits. The district engineer was unaware and told staff that he had assigned the acting assistant district engineer to investigate the situation and report back to the city on what had happened and why as soon as they have additional information. We've not got a full report from them, but based on the preliminary information, it appears to have been an unfortunate accident, likely a case of a subcontractor being provided wrong information or a misunderstanding a work assignment. Besides addressing immediately the issue to the district engineer and other SHA staff, we also contacted our state representatives to let them know about the issue. And we understand that one or more of them have reached out directly to the State Highway Administration for information. I will say that this is something, they don't do a whole lot of extra work along their roads. So this was really a surprise. And of course, it was certainly not the kind of activity that we want to see. So I don't anticipate that happening again, but I appreciate the staff jumping on it as soon as they were made aware.
I just wanted to mention, I had heard from quite a few residents, as I know my colleagues did also, who were quite concerned about this. Again, in the context of council priorities and focusing on how contractors work in the city, depending on what the report shows, if it looks like we might need to strengthen whatever our requirements are, and that I'd like us just to have that open as a possible thing we could look at in the fall.
Sure.
And again, depending on what, if the report shows something different and we don't need to, I would understand that, but it may be one of those things where just to really get the subcontractors to understand what's what, because an unfortunate accident that involves spraying lots of really bad pesticides is a bad thing.
It's actually very.
And I will also say that this is also an issue that our delegation is looking into, and our delegate Wilkins also sent a letter on our behalf to SHA regarding this. And I know it's not one of the reasons I had asked residents to reach out to our delegation, because it's not just here in Takoma Park that people are concerned about SHA spraying these pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Good.
Regarding Takoma Junction, and specifically the city's parking lot and use, we were pleased to learn late last week that an agreement was reached between our partner Neighborhood Development Company and the Takoma Park Silver Spring Co-op regarding a sublease of the parking lot at Takoma Junction. Per the agreement, the co-op assumed operational control of the parking lot, when the ground lease between the city and NDC commenced on September 1st. The lot will remain available to the public for parking at no charge during the term of the sublease, which is expected to last until construction begins. And of course, the city made its interest known that this remain available for all of the business area in the Takoma Junction area. This agreement was a result of the mediation discussions between NDC and the Takoma Park Silver Spring Co-op, which are continuing. So, just a note here about the kind of pre-resident survey focus groups. We've had one preliminary focus group done by the National Research Center related to, I guess, in advance of the 2018 resident survey. They conducted a focus group in late August comprised of residents who are immigrants from African countries. Another focus group comprised of residents who are immigrants from Latin American countries is scheduled for later this month. And these are groups that in the past have had low response rates on our resident survey. The focus groups, we're hoping to get important feedback from the residents that could help inform city officials about their perspectives, but also to see if there's any kind of modification we might want to make to the questions that are asked on the resident survey, which will be forthcoming. Speaking of surveys, we've got a census item coming up, and if people would like to practice kind of help test a smartphone application in advance of the 2020 census, we have information. There's a testing that would be done here at the city of Takoma Park on, let's see, which date? Wednesday, September 12th, between 8:30 and 3 p.m. And participants will receive $60 for about a 90-minute participation. So if somebody wants to help test in advance of the census and make sure that they're doing the right thing, they can earn some money doing so. I wanted to just mention a number of different things about housing tonight. The rent stabilization reporting process has been changing, and it's now it's more online now. So this year, we'll have initial review of the reports for compliance with the city's rent stabilization law by landlords to take place through this new online system. So the thing that's nice about it is that renters can then kind of double check to see if they're getting charged the right amount. And so we ask if a renter lives in a rent stabilized building, they can participate in a short online survey, which can be linked here on my city manager report. Staff will follow up with respondents within 1 business day of their submission to verify the status of the rental property and confirm compliance with the amount that they're paying with the rent stabilization law. So it's nice that we're making that easier to do for renters. Councilmember Kovar mentioned the charrette for the Montgomery College Math Science Building that's coming up on September 11th. Yes, ma'am.
So how are we reaching out to the renters to?
We've been getting the word out to the different. Oh yeah. I'm letting you know, but we're also going through a number of ways to other channels to let people know, and we've done that in the past, but it's been more cumbersome. So this time it's a little easier for people to check to see if they're paying the right amount. I'm very happy to announce that Grace Wiggins is now our new Housing and Community Services Manager in the Housing and Community Development Department. She'll be responsible for administering the city's rental housing and grants programs, in addition to implementing a variety of affordable housing projects. Prior to coming to the city, Ms. Wiggins served as program counsel at the Legal Services Corporation, overseeing the operation of grants to nonprofit legal services across the country. She's also served as the director of the New York program at Single Stop USA, a national nonprofit dedicated to helping vulnerable individuals and families gain economic stability. And she was previously worked also with the District of Columbia administering their rent stabilization program. I think you'll find her a delightful person and someone to work well as we really dive into hopefully adopting the recommendations and considering the recommendations of the Draft Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan. Speaking of plans, I've received a number of suggestions that the city should have some plans to refer to as they're looking at the Takoma Junction project or consideration of Dorothy's Woods or those kind of thing. And I want to say we have plans. And so recognizing that sometimes it doesn't just jump out to people, and it's useful to know that we have a number of master plans that guide our work on a daily basis, and that staff in particular looks at on a regular basis as we're drafting recommendations for the council. And so what I've done is in the city manager reports provided some links to adopted master plans that affect Takoma Park. These include the Takoma Park Master Plan, the New Hampshire Avenue Corridor Concept Plan, the Takoma Langley's Crossroads Sector Plan, the Long Branch Sector Plan, and a number of transit and bike plans. Then there's some plans that are in progress, such as the Draft Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan, of which we're already implementing some things and we'll be talking a lot about in the coming months. We also have a public land and open space management plan that's in preparation. This includes a review of and recommendations for the use of land within the rights-of-way and other open spaces. Years ago, we also had an open space plan, so there's some links to some of the very old stuff, but this is a new look at how we treat our public spaces. And we have a number of other plans that are on our project directory on the website. So I just wanted people to recognize that although we're responsive, we're not just kind of reacting to things on an ad hoc basis. We do have master plans that guide our work and that really are appropriate and thoughtful for Takoma Park. And so I urge people to look at those. And as we are looking at the plans that will be coming before the council over the next few months, I look forward to the community input on those, because I think that's how the previous ones, I think, became really good and strong, and they need to continue to have that community input. We got a couple pictures here about our new bike repair stations that got put up over the summer, and our city planner, Jamie Ernst, updating bus stop information, which I know is a particular of interest to one of our members of the audience. I'd like to just pass along kudos to our sanitation employees. We got a nice email from a resident saying that they go above and beyond work. The woman said, "I'd love to nominate our city's trash and recycling workers for recognition. Not only do they do a wonderful job with their official duties, they go above and beyond to be kind to my 2 kids, in particular my preschool-aged son, who's fascinated by their work. They talk to him, wave to him, honk the horn, let him inspect their work, etc." I do hear this kind of comment verbally often, but it's wonderful when we receive written thanks and letters of appreciation. So I wanted to share that. We have.
Can I just interrupt? I forgot one other thing, which is the Forest Park neighborhood. Daryl already left. The Forest Park area residents really appreciate. You have no idea how much work the city public works staff has done in that park in the last couple of weeks with the wood chips, the trimming, and the pruning, and all of the cleaning up, and generally getting it.
We'll pass that along.
So thank you very much.
Okay, great. I also just wanted to note that later in the month, the International City County Management Association Convention will be taking place. Every year, the Deputy City Manager and I go to this convention because it is particularly valuable for us. But this year's a little different because it's in Baltimore. And our very small state organization is the hosting entity. So we may attend some of the sessions, but we're going to be working our butts off during the time when it's in Baltimore, which is September 22 to 26, helping to organize some of the facilities, make sure people do the tours and all of that. Just letting you know that we may be a little less available than we usually are when we're at these conferences, but we're really thrilled to be able to highlight Maryland to this organization. And one of the things that's kind of nice is Takoma Park gets to get a little bit extra plugs from the visitors. Visitors, I think there's usually about 3,000, more than that now, but they come from New Zealand and England and varieties of places across the country, and it's a very nice gathering, but it's going to be fun to show off Maryland and Takoma Park. That's it. Any other questions?
Any questions for the city manager? All right. I think the rest of our agenda hopefully will go pretty quickly since we've already had a discussion of the waiver of the city option to purchase 7906 Flower Avenue. And Montgomery County interest in exercising its right of first refusal. We will have a resolution on this that will come before us next week.
Right.
Does anybody have any comments on this or direction for staff as they put together the resolution? Councilmember Smith.
I just want to go on the record and say I support us going forward.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful that Montgomery County is putting its money to help us on this.
Great. And I want to thank Ms. Daines. It was very nice to have Dr. Chapman here to hear about their work.
She's charming.
Yes, she is, and I'm very excited. It was very nice to have her here. The next was the discussion of request for payment in lieu of property taxes for 126 to 128 Lee Avenue. This didn't come up in the discussion, but I want to make sure people know, I don't know where mine went to, the agenda item, the fiscal impact that this has on the city over the next 10 years by figuring the taxes on it. And this is another one that will come before us, not next week, but soon, correct? For the resolution? Soon.
Yes, we were looking at early October.
One of the things I wanted to point out is that prior to the purchase of the property by Coalition Homes, both buildings had been condemned. The electrical and other infrastructure was in unsafe condition and was inhabitable. As a result of that, when a property is condemned, the state assessor's office goes through and reduces the value of the property, the structure that's been condemned. So it doesn't have an impact on the value of the land, but it does have an impact on the value of this property. So the assessed value of the property right now, I believe, is about $17,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that doesn't generate a whole lot of property taxes. So the information regarding the fiscal impact of this particular request is, as noted in the memorandum, low. Because right now, over a 10-year period, the total impact would be, based on current assessed values and levy rates, et cetera, would be about $28,000. I anticipate that being not significantly, higher than what is here once that property gets back and is more appropriately valued by the assessor's office.
And when will that be?
They're going through and do that this year, so.
Right, all of the
Right.
assessments
We're
are, well,
up.
it'll probably be done very shortly because after their inspection, they'll get that, but we're in the triennial tax year too.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
by December, a lot of assessments will be done through the
Right.
city.
But I don't believe it'll have an impact until next levy year, if I remember correctly. What I distributed, there's a big version that theoretically is easier to read than the little version.
Yeah, I just kept the little versions
Yeah, I'm
because I
sorry.
figured what the heck.
Yeah, I love spreadsheets.
Is it only one page?
It's both sides.
Double-sided?
Okay.
It's just folded different.
Okay.
So, I gave you all my copies, so I can't tell you what it says.
You can have the little
I
version.
know.
It took me a while to figure out they were the same thing. I know you told me, but it
Sorry
just-
about that. This is a working document that we use to just track things. So on the very left-hand column is the name of the property owner. The account numbers, if you're interested, you could pull up the SDAT records and see how it's all assessed, et cetera, with the street address. And then we've included the ordinance number and then the levy year so that we can sort of track how things progress over a period of time and what the exemption is for the pilot. You'll note that there are some great variations, though we tend to like 25, 50, and 100% exemptions. And then if you go across the board, it'll give you an indication of collectively what the annual impact of those current levies or current pilots are on the city as a whole. So in tax levy year 2018, which is this current year, the total impact of the pilots that have been approved is roughly $118,000. When you look at the levy year, think of the opposite of the fiscal year. It's the beginning of the year as opposed to the end, which is what you've got for your fiscal year. The request that was submitted by Coalition Homes for the pilot was submitted earlier this year, but had been deferred given a variety of activity that was on the city council agenda. So rather than kicking in this levy year, it would kick in or become effective this upcoming levy year.
I would just want to note that, Ms. Daines, you can correct me if I'm incorrect, but it used to be that we did more substantial pilot agreements, but they now had been more like the 50%. So I know there's a couple exceptions, but it seems like we've not been doing like 75% and 100% for a while.
It depends. One of the recommendations of the strategic plan, if you recall, is the development of a policy and procedures regarding the use of the pilot as a financing tool for advancing affordable housing, but then also a policy regarding how those pilots are determined. We had proposed this to council many years ago, and they elected at that time to continue to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. So there have been some pilot requests that have not been approved for a variety of reasons. Others, Coalition Homes, I think, has a pilot for a couple of their properties that's 100% for the entire time, whereas others are 25% for extended period of time. The interesting thing about the Coalition Homes request for a pilot for this particular structure is that it's specifically tied to the number of units within the two buildings that are earmarked for affordable housing. So the question about market rate, those theoretically, the pilot that they've requested will not have an impact on those those units. It's all a numbers thing, but so they're acknowledging that the building in entirety is not affordable housing from a technical standpoint.
Councilmember Kovar, Siemens, and then Damala.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. So first, a general question just about the chart, but then I had a specific thing to say about the one that we're talking about. So this chart says, say, for example, for the tax levy year 2017, the $120,000, I know you don't have the chart right in front of you, but the $120,000 total at the bottom, that represents all basically the amount of tax revenue that was sort of foregone by the city for doing all of these.
During
right?
that levy
Right.
year.
So, and maybe when we do this, when we talk about this in the context of the strategic plan, we can have some sort of calculation of, what amount per unit or something like that, so we have a sense for what that is. The second thing I would say, and I don't know how the timing would work out, or what my colleagues would feel about that, but I think the last time we had some pilots, and I did support them, but we also talked about wanting to have a policy. And so I'm uncertain as to whether we should go forward with this until we've had a chance to talk about that more generally in the fall. And if maybe we have the chance to talk about when this sort of has to be done by in order to make it work for the organizations. Like, in other words, is there even time for us to potentially get into that question about the pilot policy far enough in advance for the organization to be able to benefit from this? I guess that's what I would be curious about.
From a staffing perspective and my understanding of upcoming agendas, no. We just don't have the capacity to do that because it's a fairly complicated conversation.
Right.
I wish I could say yes, but I
Well, I mean,
don't honestly believe that we would be able to do a very good job and to give you the time that I would encourage you to take to evaluate your options when you're making a decision, because it'll have a long-lasting impact on a
But
variety
is there a
of properties.
deadline for this one by which we have to?
Considering that they submitted their request in January, I would be hesitant, just from a professional standpoint, to delay any further action on their request.
And I would just also say that, I mean, this and the other one we were talking about tonight, I mean, these are the kind of projects I think we want to encourage in the city and not discourage people to be working with us. So I agree that we need to look at this policy,
It seems like we always
but,
just say, let's have a policy, and we kind of never get there. So-
well, I agree. I think there were
For-
extenuating circumstances with our agenda
I agree.
this time, and, you know, we said we were going to take up the strategic plan. We have a new housing person on board. We didn't know in March we were losing the point person on this, so I understand. I don't like kicking things down the road either, but I will say this is exactly the type of project we want in the city and want to encourage more partnerships like this.
If I may, the other thing that I would like to point out is that the two properties you had an opportunity to hear about this evening are both very small scale, you know, garden style apartments, for lack of a better phrase. And very unlike some of the larger affordable housing properties that you've had to consider in the past. Coalition Homes, for example, you know, 12 units is pretty big for the properties that they own and operate in Takoma Park. So keeping on the small scale, I would hate to penalize them or the National Center for Families and Children if they were to come back for a pilot, because of the time that might be involved to develop a policy regarding the pilot.
Councilmember Stevens?
Thank you, Mayor. It also ties in with the affordable housing plan, too. When we're making plans, probably ought to be talking about both of those at the same time. You know, these are no-brainers to me. You know, it's, as the mayor said, these are the types of developments that we want to go on and we want to encourage. And so I fully support this and look forward to it passing. Be willing to talk more if people want to stay up later.
Councilwoman DeBala?
Yeah, I think these are exactly the kinds of projects that we want to do, and as you point out, they're not large, so that's
they're small.
because some of these are huge. My question is are some of these, does every one of them have an end date, like the one that's proposed is for 10 years?
Right, so
And
if you
so
look,
are some of the, yeah.
if you look
help
at
me
the
out.
chart, you'll see the resolution number that it authorized the pilot in the first place. So what I've done is just to take the lines, the rows out to the point where that resolution expires. So I'm looking at the Edinburgh House, for example. Their pilot, under their current resolution, would expire in 2020.
Okay,
We
thank
haven't
you.
done the projections beyond this levy year in an effort to keep it real.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Councilwoman Costick?
Thank you. I agree that I think this is exactly the type of thing we want to support, but I also think we should return to this and try to find a way to systematize, I don't know, it's too late at night to speak coherently, how we're doing things. You noted that the 75% corresponding with the number of affordable units was a little bit unique. Are any of these others that you know of similar to that, or is that something that's unique to this proposal?
They're unique in the sense that it's the opposite. So for example, Maple Towers, which is at 7610 Maple Avenue, essentially that's 100% affordable housing with few, if any, market rate, whereas their pilot this year is at 50%.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's one of the reasons that I would encourage you to take the time to develop a policy that evaluates what impact these has. Not to extend the conversation longer, but we have an intern on staff who is a PhD, and I don't know what it is, but he's an amazing numbers cruncher guy. And so he's been going through all the pilots to compare what impact these this form of financial assistance has had on the rents and the values of the properties. So based on what I understand him to be telling me, when we go through and see the new assessed values, the value of some of these properties are going to jump up dramatically because they're undervalued for a variety of reasons, primarily because of the housing or the income that's generated by the property. So that's another balancing or another issue that needs to be taken in consideration.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Searcy?
So I agree with the point that was raised about wanting to make sure that we're creating the incentives for folks to continue to create these types of opportunities for affordability. But I do notice in the list that there's common names kind of cropping up a lot. And so it made me wonder, in addition to the value and of the properties and ensuring that the rents are stabilized, to what extent are we also making sure that properties are maintained and we're not getting complaints? And I mean, I want to encourage more of these opportunities, but I also don't want to keep allowing perhaps folks who are not maintaining properties appropriately over time to continue to be able to benefit. You know what I mean? So I do think that it's important for us as we're thinking about this policy going forward and what is the criteria that we want to hold people to before we approve something like a pilot. I think we should think of all facets of the project itself and also their reputation in the community, because as a result, it may actually lead to people improving the properties that are already affordable properties that are already here. If they know I want to invest again, I have to make sure to get this tax break that I maintain my properties.
Yeah. It's important to note I agree with you, or what you're saying. It's important to note that the state legislation that allows the city to issue a pilot is very specific in terms of who's eligible to receive a pilot. And you have to be like an official nonprofit affordable housing provider, which is why you see the duplication of the names, because the reality is there aren't a lot of nonprofit affordable housing providers that do business in Montgomery County. And with the rare exception, and there's always a glitch in property maintenance, a majority of these buildings have been greatly improved as a result of the involvement of the group that owns it now, and who've been able to access a significant amount of funding through the state through the low-income housing tax credit project, which requires a local contribution, which this is really the only form that we can provide, is through this deferment of property, or not deferment, but abatement of property taxes. So it's murky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Do you have enough for the resolution? Awesome. Thank you. Last thing on our agenda is some cleanup on the amendments we need to make to the ethics ordinance. Do I turn this over to, who am I turning it over to? The city attorney?
Good evening. So the proposed ethics chapter amendments are primarily changes that are required by changes in state law. We must make sure our ordinance is at least as stringent as the state law, and it also includes a few clarifications to existing law. It essentially codifies state ethics commission's interpretations of the code language, just so the ordinance is more clear on its face. And if you'd like, I can just run through the amendments. Starting on page 2, paragraph 6, it adds exchanged, or actually it excludes exchange-traded funds from the definition of interest for the purpose of annual financial reporting, so that when the council is filling out their financial disclosure forms, you wouldn't have to list exchange-traded funds, which are similar to mutual funds. They're just, I think the way you buy them is different. Page 2, or also on page 2, paragraph A3, it prohibits former lobbyists who become city employees from participating in a matter where they previously lobbied for 1 year after they stop lobbying. Now, this is required. It's not really an issue because we do not see lobbyists here very often. Page 3, paragraph 1, it prohibits appointed officials and employees from using public resources or their official title to solicit campaign contributions. That's just an interpretation of current law. Paragraph 2 prohibits elected officials from using public resources to solicit campaign contributions. For example, using your city email account, postage machine, copier, staff time, things like that.
Could I just ask a question? So the difference is elected officials can use their title, but they can't use public resources. Is that what?
Right.
To solicit funds?
So Susie couldn't say, I'm the city manager of Takoma Park and I'm running for, state delegate. But you could say, I'm the council member.
As
for
long as I
Takoma
don't
Park.
use like my city phone or city
Correct.
email. Okay.
Or your business cards. That happened in the past.
Paragraph J2 restricts former council members from engaging in lobbying activity for 1 year after leaving office. Formerly, the prohibition was until the end of the next session. Paragraph E5 requires the redaction of elected officials' home address from their financial disclosure statements before they're released to the public. So it gives you a little bit of privacy.
Sorry.
But
Everybody knows where you're
didn't we already have to share our address when we ran?
Yeah, God. Just Google it.
So I guess it's not much help if it gets out right.
That's crazy.
Then page 4, paragraph 8C requires that elected officials an elected official whose spouse is a registered lobbyist disclose who their clients are in their financial disclosure statement. And then paragraph 5 prohibits the disclosure of employees and appointed officials' home addresses on their disclosure statements. And those are all the changes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kovar, is your light
Oh,
on? All right. Anyone have any questions regarding this? No? All right. Well, I'm glad you stayed for this. Sorry. All right. I think we're adjourned. Thank you very
All right.
much.